Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Looks like most everybody, all three of you so far, are back in your office, huh? That's good.
Yeah.
Morning, Don.
Hey, good morning, Ron. Good morning, everyone.
So we have a couple minutes here yet.
Diane, were you able to get the Zoom link up on the website?
Sorry, what was that?
Well, I noticed that the Zoom link for the public has been removed from the website, and I had emailed this morning when I saw that. The only option right now is to watch on Facebook, which is not sufficient for, obviously there's many people who are not users of social media. So I'd sent an email asking that the Zoom link be updated to the website as it's always been.
No, we haven't had a Zoom link for the last several months because we had problems with having to manage people. But it will be available shortly after the meeting for anyone to watch.
I don't think that's an adequate way to have people attend a public meeting after the fact. If there are people who want to watch the public meeting as it's occurring, they need to be provided that opportunity.
They can comment during the meeting, or I mean, we can't make technology available in every single forum for everyone. I'm not sure why it's a problem. It hasn't been a problem in the past several months that we've done it this way, but it's difficult to manage, hundreds of people that are on the meeting at once. But if they want to watch via other format, they're free to do so.
Ryan, your sound is very scratchy.
Yeah, it's really hard to hear you clearly, Ryan.
Well, that's probably something that we need to discuss.
We'll have him jump off and back on. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning. Morning.
Morning. Morning, Mayor.
Good morning.
Morning.
Okay, it's 8:31. I'm going to start the meeting. I'm going to call the meeting to order. And is Ryan back on?
Okay, I'm back on. Is that better?
Much better.
Yeah.
Much better. Thank you.
All right, Ryan, I'm going to ask you to introduce the guest and staff.
Okay. Commissioner Anderson.
Here.
Dr. Sean Clary, citizen representative. Okay, Commissioner McKinney.
I think you're muted, Amanda.
To mute and unmute. Present.
Commissioner.
Brian, you may want to say it again, sir.
Were you asking for me? I'm not sure. I didn't hear
Yes.
that. Okay, yes, I'm here.
All right, Mayor Byers.
Here.
Councilmember Duvall.
Here.
Dr. Atterbury, citizen representative.
Here.
All right, is Dr. Clary on?
Dr. Clear is absent this meeting.
Okay. Andre Fresco, executive director.
Here, thank you.
Myself, Ryan Iback, chief operating officer. Chase Porter, senior finance manager.
Present.
Melissa Sixberry, director of disease control.
Here.
Lillian Bravo, director of public health partnerships.
Good morning. Here.
Sean McGee, director of environmental health.
Good morning. Here.
Nathan Johnson, local emergency response coordinator.
Here.
Dr. Larry Yeka, health officer.
Here.
Victoria Reyes, administrative assistant.
Here.
James Elliott, YHD attorney.
Good morning.
Is there any other YHD staff?
Yasmin Barrios is on.
Okay.
Thank you. Next, we will review the comments that have been submitted by the public. I understand that there's several to go through, so if you would proceed with that, Ryan, I'd appreciate it.
Okay, we do have 52 written comments that were submitted. And so Melissa will be helping me out on the written, reading the written comments. So I'll start and then we'll just go back and forth. At any time during the meeting, if any of the board members or staff want to address any of the written comments, and they're free to do so. So the first one is from Alice and Nick Wiles. First of all, thank you for your dedication to the residents of Yakima County. We appreciate your local leadership and what you do for us on our behalf. As parents of a 5-year-old, we are concerned with the possible continuation of wearing masks in the classroom again this upcoming school year. We are in support of thorough sanitation practices and understand the reasoning behind temperature checks. However, we believe we should be able to choose whether or not our child wears a mask at school. This should be a choice that each individual family has the right to make. COVID-19 vaccines are readily available for anyone 12 and over. And as of July 12, 70% of people 16 and older in our state have received at least one dose. We have had opportunity to get vaccines ourselves and are aware of the risk with or without it. Given that, we feel like we should be able to make the decision for our children on whether or not they should have to wear a mask. Our children rely on us as parents to make crucial decisions for them and to advocate for their health and rights. Please give us the choice that is best for our child. Thank you in advance for your support and advocating for mask choice in school for the 2021-22 school year. Gloria Anderson. To the Yakima Health District Board. I am a grandmother of 3 children attending the West Valley School District and godmother of 4 boys attending a private school in Yakima Valley. It is my belief that our family's individual need the freedom to decide if masks are necessary for their children attending school. It should not be mandatory in the schools. We need to get back to living our lives normally, and that includes getting back to basics in the classroom. The fear of possibly getting the virus needs to stop. Teachers need to get back to teaching in the classroom. If they want to wear the mask, then so be it. Do not require our children to wear masks because of the fear of a few teachers. There is no science to back up this way of thinking. Get back to the basics of washing hands regularly and old-fashioned common sense. Please do what is best for our children. Do not mandate mask wearing for students at our schools. Thank you for your service. Next one is from Megan Mock. I am writing to implore you once again to recommend to schools that masks be made optional for this coming school year. Children should not be wearing masks for any length of time in any location or at any age. Reason 1, science. There's plenty of scientific data out there at your fingertips to show you that wearing masks is unhealthy for kids. Show the community that you believe in science and not politicians. Please stop oppressing children with unnecessary medical equipment. Unless a child's doctor recommends that he or she wears a mask, they should not have school officials prescribing them. Also, let's look at the statistics for our county. We have still had 0 kids in the hospital with the virus. There is still a 98.68 recovery rate for all people. There are only 20-some people in the hospital at this time in a county of 250,000. When we started these COVID regulations, we did so as to not overwhelm the hospitals. For the last several months, there have been very little mask wearing around the community. I have not worn a mask since school got out. Stores, medical offices, restaurants, everywhere. Everyone is fine. We are not in the midst of a pandemic. Clearly, we are past that threat. It is time to return to life as normal. Reason 2, America. Never in the history of the world have the healthy been asked to restrict their freedoms for the immunocompromised. In all the years before COVID, it was understood that children get the flu. They spread the flu more readily than COVID to adults, but no masks or social distancing requirements were ever put in place. Allow Americans to assess the risk for themselves and live free. Our country was created on the following hierarchy of authority. Number 1, God. Number 2, man. Humans versus humans, us people, citizens of the US. Number 3, society. Number 4, government. Over the past several years, this hierarchy has become inverted, and it's time we take it back. Our commissioners were elected and they have more authority than the health officer and any health district members. It's time for individuals to stop complying with the tyrannical authority that is misplaced. Our God-given liberties have been oppressed long enough, and it's time to end. Thank you for making the choice to return Yakima to pre-pandemic status. Thank you for recommending to all school districts that masks should be optional for our health and freedom. Thank you for remembering that our country was created with the authority hierarchy that puts people above the government. Next one is Tanya Carney. I'm writing to beg you not to make our children wear masks to school this year. I work in the healthcare field. Not everyone has resources at home for good hygiene. Masks, even with good hygiene, are filthy with some germs on the inside, and our kids are breathing those in when they wear them. It's much healthier for them to breathe in clean, fresh air. I also hope that you would not mask the unvaccinated versus vaccinated, as I think this will be a breeding ground for horrific bullying that we don't need to see get worse any worse than it already is among school-age kids. Teachers have been vaccinated. Some kids over 12 have been vaccinated, and those that have not are not at risk when speaking of school-age kids. Ashley Kruger. I am writing on behalf of kids across Yakima County. They deserve a choice. This is no longer about a virus. It is simply about control. Our oldest daughter started back to in-person school last September. Mask wearing was not enforced, and there wasn't a single COVID case at her school. My other two daughters stayed in the public school where mask wearing was enforced to the point of bullying, rewarding those that wore them and humiliating and punishing those that did not, from the staff and ASB alike. Enough is enough. I do not want to pull all three this year, but will gladly do so if mask wearing or COVID testing is required. It is a choice. The adults that wanted a vaccine got it and are safe. Kids are not affected by this virus anywhere near the same as adults. At this point, people are flat out angry. You, the health board, have the ability to use your brains and let us use ours too. Stop looking like fools to the community and start to regain respect from adults and the next generation. These kids deserve normal. They don't deserve the bullying the masks create. They don't wear them now, have it all summer. They go everywhere and do everything like normal kids.
Okay, this one is from Chantel Slyman. I write today to you regarding the upcoming discussion on whether or not children should continue to wear face masks in school this coming fall. I would strongly urge that masks be considered a voluntary choice. At this point in the COVID situation, anyone and everyone that wants to get the vaccination has had the opportunity to do so. Any teachers, school staff, volunteer, or students over the age of 12 have had the ability to do what is best for themselves. Children do not need to be masked up again for 6+ hours a day. In our state, throughout the entire 18 months of this pandemic, we are still at 100% recovery rate for children ages 0 to 19. For the Washington State Department of Health COVID dashboard, 0 children have passed away from COVID. Those that are teaching our students have access to the vaccine, have the option to continue to wear a mask, etc. It should not still be required for children to sit through school, recess, lunch, wearing a mask. This should now be up to the parents to make the best choice for their students' health. Thank you for your time and attention to this matter. From Jackie Panatani. Mr. Ibeck, I am writing to you concerning the upcoming Board of Health meeting tomorrow. I work as a public school teacher in Yakima County. I love my job, but nothing has frustrated me more as an educator than these past 17 months of ever-changing COVID restrictions. I have seen the effects on my students firsthand, and the fear effects will continue into years into the future for many of them. One thing that has affected them and myself is the physical and emotional effects of masks. For myself, headaches and physical exhaustion find their way into my days, and I give the credit to masks since I have never had daily symptoms like those before masking up. Trying to teach, having to repeat myself over and over because students cannot understand what I am saying. I cannot understand what they are saying. It leads to massive frustration on both sides and a loss of learning that can be measured but is unavoidable. Students running around and outside with masks is child abuse, I believe. Have you observed a PE class where students have had to wear masks? They are trying hard to catch their breath, red faces, and are all sweaty. It really is a travesty, and I feel horrible for them. I have read several articles on the efficacy of masks and have come to the conclusion that they are like trying to stop a sandworm from a cyclone fence. They may actually be doing more physical damage to developing lungs. Scary and not very effective. What is the point? Then there's the emotional damage being done to children. So many cues from facial expressions and tone. If students cannot pick up on those cues, then it leads to misunderstanding. Yakima has a lot of diversity in its public schools. Masks are a hindrance to expression and tone and makes our jobs that much more difficult. Thank you for hearing me out. This has been building for several months, and I am glad that you are holding this session. May science and common sense lead you. From Sarah Hartley, I am asking that the board make this policy a mass choice. It should not be one size fits all policy. Parents should have the right to choose what is best for their child. Young students are generally the highest segment of the population. Wearing a mask is restrictive to the overall social and classroom experience. Mass choice is the best solution for students heading back to school for the upcoming school year. The Yakima County Health District should not be making a policy for any local school districts. From Joseph Taylor, please remove any mask requirements in Yakima County and return to 2019 normalcy. Societal mask wearing does nothing to limit SARS-CoV-2 spread, and our children have little to no risk for hospitalization or death from COVID-19. Children remain poor transmitters of the virus and still account for 0% of all deaths in Washington state. Adults have 3 decent gene therapy-based vaccines to choose from. Half the population has natural immunity and thus not require vaccination, and the rest of us can assume their own risk. From Matthew Linder, I strongly request that all mask requirements in Yakima County be removed to permit to return to 2019 societal norms. This is requested for all domains in which the Yakima County Health Board has authority, but particularly in schools or other facilities which primarily exist to serve children. Children and under age 19 have little to no risk of death from COVID-19, fewer than 350 out of a nationwide cohort of 81 million. Children have 3 vaccines to choose from, which provide a high level of protection from serious illness or death, including the new Delta variant. According to Johns Hopkins University, 58.93% of Washington state residents are fully vaccinated. About 6% of the population of Washington state has tested positive for COVID, acquiring immunity in the traditional way. The unknown percentage of asymptomatic cases acquired immunity in the traditional way. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, about 21.8% of the Washington state population is 18 or younger, the negligibility impacted population. The remaining adults, who represent at most 15 to 16% of the population, have had more than 6 months to choose vaccination. It is time for unvaccinated adults to assume the risk of their decisions and permit the rest of society to return to normal operations. As someone who has worked in high hazard industries for more than 20 years and has been repeatedly trained on the proper wearing of PPE, I can attest it takes discipline to wear masks properly. Most adults fail to wear masks properly because they don't have the self-discipline to use masks as a single-use disposable item. Kids have far less discipline or need to maintain proper sanitary controls.
Rachel Keeler, I am requesting that the Yakima County Board of Health remove the mask requirements for the students in Yakima County. Our children deserve better. It should be a choice and not forced. Our children need normalcy. They need to see their teachers' faces. They need to see their friends' faces. Masks cover facial expressions, which prevents emotional intelligence. By requiring masks for our children, we are encouraging them to live in fear. Time to let our kids be kids. Michelle Downs, my children will not attend public schools again until they are not required to wear masks. Please allow mask choice in Natchez School District. Kim Allen, I am a mom of a student and an employee at a school. Please put the ball back in the parents' court as far as what is best for our children and themselves. I know from personal experience that while wearing the mask during school, I felt like I was going to pass out. It happens quite a bit. My daughter plays sports. Although the seasons were short, wearing masks made it hard to breathe. How is that good for our kids? I implore you all to leave it up to the parents and kids. If they want to wear masks, let them. If they don't, let them. Michelle Wiles, I'm a 63-year-old grandma of 3 school-age children. They spent last year completely masked and distanced as ordered. The masks were difficult for their social development and understanding of the teacher and each other. This is in the name of not contracting COVID and giving it to older people. Since my husband, who is 69, and I are vaccinated, I plead with you to allow us to make our own decisions about masking for the upcoming school year. As much as we have respected other decisions to mask up, we ask you to respect what we decide is best for our family. We are all ultimately responsible for ourselves and our children. Chris and Brooke Jolly, please make the decision that is best for the children this year. No mask requirements for all students. Let families make the choice that is best for their individual circumstances. Children have a 0 to minimal chance for getting seriously sick with COVID. With the vaccine available to any adults who choose to get it, there is 0 reason to put masks on these precious children's faces to protect the older generation. Remember, a face mask on a healthcare worker is far cleaner and not to be touched by ungloved, unwashed hands. These kids touch surfaces in bathrooms, the playground, the hallways, side rails, and then touch their masks hundreds of times a day. These masks get filthy with germs, and we're forcing kids to breathe those in along with higher rates of carbon dioxide rather than freshly, well-vented, circulated air. This is not healthy for our children. The horrible health effects and loss of social emotional well-being to be masked up 35 to 40 hours a week for these kids far outweighs any chance this could help. Not seeing their friends smile, laugh, their teachers encouraging facial recognition, all of it is lost behind a mask. Please let our children have the choice within their own families to go back to the school without any restrictions for teachers. To go back to school without the restriction and for teachers to be able to connect with their students again face to face, unmasked. It's time to fight for those who represent, not fight against them. Mass choice, let families decide what is right for their child.
Hey, this is from Scott Brumback. I am a father of 2 children in local schools. My grandson will start school soon. I believe that masks are minimally viable in terms of offering any real protection to stop the spread of COVID-19, and it deviates variants. I have observed and been at times one of the mask wearers for over a year. My experience shows that those who wear masks often use the same mask over and over. Old dirty masks, many times worn, conveniently thrown on the dash of the car, only to be worn again and again. Mask thus is not used for meaningful safety measures, amount to what is essentially a status symbol, that is by a means by which to convey a statement about whether to mask up, obey the governor's orders, and generally go along with certain ideological perspective. The only question about masks that seems to get to this point is this: will children wearing masks provide any meaningful and provable safety measures that will actually save lives or protect health? Before we mask our children, our default position must be that we will not make our children wear masks unless we know for a fact that masking them will save lives and promote good health. We must honestly ask this question, and not with speculation or conjecture, but by and through evidence that is real, palpable, and uncontroverted. We must know that masking our children will truly save lives. We know that the psychological impacts on children wearing masks is real, tremendous, and quite harmful. So we start with the proposition that masking children is harmful, then we must look at whether this harm is outweighed by the benefit in order ways. But we know masks alert children to danger on a daily basis. We tell them that to be around their schools, their friends, and people in general is dangerous. Conveying such a message to children is horrible. It scares them. The adults of the world are telling them that this virus may harm, even kill them. But as they age and learn, will the evidence bear this out? And will they one day conclude that they have been lied to or deceived? The importance of our actions today is tremendous. We must be honest with them, or else we violate a sacred trust we have with our children. If we are honest, we must tell the children that the risks of this virus are certainly less than other hazards and that they encounter in their life, such as riding in a car. If we are honest, we know that most children go to school with the same old dirty masks. Do the schools require the masks to be changed daily? I mean, really insist that they are. Children aren't dumb. If a clean new mask really will help, they do it. But they know for themselves the mortality rate is virtually zero for children. And if they truly thought masks saved lives, they'd not wear the same old mask. Psychologically, the segregating of children and forcing them to mask their faces is a horrible thing to do to them unless the evidence is undeniable and compelling and that there are simply no other options. I don't think you have that evidence. Ask yourselves, are you simply playing it safe and erring on the side of caution in one sense, but also willing to allow harm to another by making the children wear masks? Self-deception may be at play here, thinking you are doing a public good while sacrificing the health and safety of children. You are maybe taking the easy way out because you don't want to make any waves or cause any trouble by being some sort of malcontent. Yet your duty is to question and analyze and adapt. Our opinions should not be set in stone. Our duty is to help children develop physically and psychologically into healthy human beings. You are potentially harming children so you can play it safe. That is wrong. But we have several vaccines now. People who have wanted vaccines have now had ample time to get the vaccine. In fact, anyone who wants a vaccine can get one. Everyone. We have reached the vaccine saturation point. And as we know, and that should be made a matter of record, vaccines are now going unused and are being disposed of due to lack of demand. So the undeniable fact is that all who want vaccines have overwhelmingly got their vaccines. They are posture differently so that than they were a year ago. They are, according to vaccine advocates, protected now. So why do we mask the children? We are masking the children because that is what we think we know to do. It is a habit now, and now it appears to be risky to not mask children, when in fact the greatest risk to our children is to mask them and harm them in ways that we know are real and I explained above. So what to do? What we do is act like adults and understand that people are not robots subject to the whims and controls of people in power, but we are instead able to see and perceive and make decisions. Masking should be a choice, freedom to choose. The CDC is political statement, and national government players are political. They are engaged in political theater that is far, far away, but their actions have negative implications here at home. My children are being impacted by what you all do. My duty as a parent is to them, while also being cognizant of the risks and dangers in life that affect other people too. We don't stop living because there is risk. Risk is a natural, non-segregable part of life. The only thing one can do is gather facts, analyze the situation, and make the best, most responsible decision possible. In this case, especially considering the availability and widespread use of vaccines, mandating our children wear masks is not the right thing to do. Let those who wish to wear masks wear them, and let those who do not be free to make their own health decisions. From Roxanne Jolly, I'm against all mandatory masking in Yakima County schools and otherwise. From Brandon Abel, I am a concerned parent of a teenage child that attends school in Yakima. Stop mandating our children to wear masks in school. It needs to be a choice. If someone chooses to wear it, then fine. But to mandate every student be the one who takes away their rights as an American and stops them from being able to express themselves at a time in their lives when it's essential for them to express themselves, to find out who they're going to be and who they are as a person. Mandating something like this is an American and is conditioning them to socialism type of environment, which is the opposite of being American. The silent majority does not want their children to mask at school. I will not send my child to school with a mask anymore. Stop trying to take away the rights that they have and let them be kids without silencing them or conditioning them to be Democratic agenda. No masks. There's also one on here from Bobby Gaffney. I wish to thank you for taking your time to consider my email address to you on Tuesday. I am very pleased that the health board chose a candidate who will, in my opinion, work hard and do a very difficult job well. From Bobby Obermeyer, mask choice needs to be front and center when it comes to our children. If this choice is taken away from the parents, the school system needs to address how they will combat the excessive carbon dioxide content in inhaled air when using a face mask and the instance of hypercapnia. Hypercapnia is too much carbon dioxide in the bloodstream, which can lead to several issues for children, such as headache, dizziness, and shortness of breath. In severe situations, it can lead to seizures and even a coma. If the freedom of choice is stripped from parents, what protections will put in place to protect children from potential bureaucratic bullying from school staff when it comes to mask enforcement, if such masks aren't used 100% correctly by the children?
All right, Amy Robert, please take a stand for what is best for our kids and call for the unmasking of our children. Number one, why are children being masked? Where is the science? Where are the numbers of proven cases where children have spread the virus? Where are the numbers to support the need to mask children for their own safety and safety of others? Children are not driving the pandemic. Number two, masks are manipulative agent of shame. It is cruel and unusual to tell a child that if they don't wear a mask, they will kill grandma. Number three, the mask causes anxiety in our children. Instead of creating peace and sense of safety, the masks are causing children stress. Number four, the mask lowers the level of oxygen in the blood and it also harbors germs and diseases as demonstrated recently in a study done at the University of Florida laboratory. Number five, the mask alienates people. Not seeing a person's full face with its facial expressions creates a barrier, inviting miscommunication. Children need to see teachers and fellow students smile at them. They need to feel liked and loved, not feared if they are unmasked. Children should not be forced to wear the mask to attend school. Public school enrollment is down across the nation and even across Yakima. I believe it is not because families are afraid of the virus, but because they fear their children will be forced to continue to live the lies of mask. Please call for the unmasking of our children or else call for the scientific evidence to prove why we should require our children to cover their faces for more than 5 hours a day, 5 days a week throughout the week school year. Chelsea Ashley, I am reaching out to try and help our children to be mask free next year. My children have fought with the mask and done very well following directs with all of this crazy life they have lived through. I vote no mask next year. Robert and Jennifer Paul, we as parents are asking that you allow our right as parents to make the best choice for our own children. In this upcoming school year concerning masks being one, it is not the duty of government to mandate such things. This is a personal decision, and as such, each family should be allowed to choose what is best for themselves and their children. Mike and Susan Scalera, I am a 70-year-old grandfather and 63-year-old grandmother, and we deeply are concerned that our grandchildren will be wearing masks again for the coming school year. We know that the risk of infection is very low. We know risk of children becoming seriously ill or even ill at all is vanishingly small. Most of the vulnerable population is already vaccinated. I am supportive of effective measures to retrain the spread of illness. However, the CDC's recommendations cross the line into excess and are frankly senseless. With staff and parents vaccinated, there is no reason to continue incredibly strict mitigation efforts or put severe limitations on activities. Charitably, masking kids is simply virtue signaling. Requiring kids to continuously wear masks, even while outside playing in the heat, when it provides little additional protection, is unfair and cruel to our children. For kids, COVID-19 is less hazardous than the flu. In a typical year, more U.S. kids drown than will have died of COVID-19. Considering that children are not incredibly low risk for the developing severe illness, the minimal benefits of mask wearing do not outweigh the substantial costs of discouraging children to be active in their overall health. Next one is from Lisa Castillo. Thank you for your continued dedication to the citizens of Yakima County. We are grateful to have such outstanding local leadership. We ask you to consider the success of St. Joseph and LaSalle and many other private schools, some of which did not mask in the classrooms and didn't have any super spreader events of COVID. Please allow us to have the freedom as promised in America. Families with delicate health have received the vaccine and are safe. As a parent of 3 children, I am very concerned with the possible continuation of forced masking K through 12 students in the classroom. Students do not use masks properly and often place dirty masks back on the face. Mouth and skin conditions began to surface due to mask use. What's next? Please realize that at this point, these mandatory mask requirements cause more potential health problems. Emotional and mental health is in decline. While we support hand hygiene practices, temperature checks, and desks 3 feet apart, we believe that it is within the rights of individual families to choose whether or not their children should wear masks. As of today, vaccines are readily available for anyone 12 and over, and 70% of Washingtonians have received at least 1 shot. It is now time to consider the end game when it comes to masking our youth. A year in a child's life is a substantial development period, and we cannot continue to disregard their cries for help. On behalf of the children in Yakima County, thank you in advance for your help in advocating for mask choice in school during the 2021-22 school year.
Okay, from Kelly Allen, thank you for your continued dedication to the citizens of Yakima County. We are grateful to have such outstanding local leadership. As a parent of 2 children, I am very concerned with the possible continuation of forced masking K-12 students in the classroom. While we support hand hygiene practices, temperature checks, and desks 3 feet apart, we believe it is within the rights of individual families to choose whether or not their children should wear masks. As of today, vaccines are readily available for anyone 12 and over, and 70% of Washingtonians have received at least 1 shot. It is now time to consider the end game when it comes to masking our youth. A year in a child's life is a substantial development period, and we can't continue to disregard their cries for help. On behalf of the children in Yakima County, thank you in advance for helping in advocating for mask choice in schools during the 2021-22 school year. From Brooke Barnes, thank you for your continued dedication to the citizens of Yakima County. We are grateful to have such outstanding local leadership. As a parent of 2 school-aged children, I am very concerned with the possible continuation of forced masking of students in the classroom. While we support hand hygiene practices and temperature checks, I believe this is we support temperature checks. We believe it is within the rights of individual families to choose whether or not their children should wear masks. As of today, vaccines are readily available to anyone aged 12 and over, and 70% of Washingtonians have received at least one shot. A recent survey found that the majority of parents with children under age 12 do not plan to vaccinate when they become eligible. It is reasonable to conclude that the majority of people who want to be vaccinated have already done so. Therefore, it is now time to consider the end of forced masking of students. Parents are aware of the risk, and it is time to let us decide what is best for our children and families. After all, parents know their children best. On behalf of the children in Yakima County, thank you in advance for helping to advocating for mask choice in school during the 2021-22 school year. From Tasha Groening, my family and I believe children and families should have their mask choice for the school year 21-22. From the beginning, we have known children are not the spreaders of COVID. It is more detrimental to their mental health to be in their masks. How are kinder kids supposed to learn new words and pronunciation with masks? My son will be entering kinder this year, and I'm heartbroken that his first school experience could be with a mask. He cries at the thought of wearing one to school and begs me to not. Please let families make their own choice for masks in school. If they can go to the grocery store and any other place without, then why should we force them to at school, a place they should feel most comfortable? From Delaney Allen. My name is Delaney Allen, and I will be a sophomore at LaSalle this fall. I'm ready to ask you to consider a mask choice policy for students this year. Now that vaccines are available for any teenager who wants one, we should be able to make the decision for ourselves whether to wear a mask. Furthermore, masks are dirty, no one wears them correctly, and they are a distraction in the classroom. We are ready to go back to normal life. Please consider giving us this choice. From Jeremy Hines, the Yakima Corner says deaths from drug overdose are up 30%. The CDC says 25% of deaths are attributed to heart disease. NIH attributes 50% of medical treatment dollars to type 2 diabetes. And Melissa Sixbury went on record saying syphilis infections are up 240%. Shouldn't the health department be focusing on syphilis, drug, heart disease, and type 2 diabetes epidemics that are plaguing our valley? I'm sure as quality of food decreases, more processing, the incidence of heart disease and diabetes go up. Can we study that to see if we need to help the equity fight?
All right, Rocco Capone. I'm a 78-year-old grandfather of 4, and I am deeply concerned that my grandchildren will be wearing masks again for the coming school year. We know that the risk of infection is very low. We know the risk of children becoming seriously ill or even ill at all is vanishingly small. And most of the vulnerable population is already vaccinated. I'm supportive of effective measures to retain the spread of illness. However, the CDC's recommendations cross the line into excess and are frankly senseless. With the staff and parents vaccinated, there's no reason to continue incredibly strict mitigation efforts or put severe limitations on activities. Charitably, masking kids is simply virtual signaling, requiring kids to continuously wear masks even while outside playing in the heat, when it provides little additional protection and unfair cruel to our children. For kids, COVID-19 is less hazardous than the flu. Considering the children are at incredibly low risk for developing severe illness, the minimal benefits of mask wearing do not outweigh the substantial cost of discouraging children to be active in their overall health. Our state has spent the last 16 months neglecting our youngsters in the name of saving grandma and grandpa. They have missed school, sports, graduations, birthday parties, and countless other joyful experiences. I'm here to tell you that it is time to give those youngsters their joy and freedom back by allowing families to decide whether their children will wear a mask at school. I don't want my grandchildren or any other child spending another minute in a mask to save me. I am vaccinated. Instead, let's allow them to live their lives again by giving them the freedom of choice. This one is from Team Player. You all know children are rarely affected by COVID and even more rarely die from it. Why are we subjecting our children to the masks when we all, as adults, can go into stores and restaurants without one? My children have not gone anywhere since May with a mask as well. Why are we forcing this in schools where the probability is so low? They cannot concentrate and with headaches and distractions caused by the mask. Aren't we supposed to follow the science? If so, then really read it. Dennis Richardson. It's time to end mask requirements in schools. Everyone has had the opportunity to get the vaccine if they so choose. According to the science, COVID is really not dangerous to kids, yet we force them to go through their day wearing a mask. It is a choice everywhere else. Why is it not for schools? I think masks are bad for their health and bad for developing social skills. We have caused enough harm to our children over the last 2 school years. We need to stop this madness. Thank you for your consideration. Julie Picotti, thank you for your continued dedication to the citizens of Yakima County. We appreciate your leadership. As a parent of twin girls, I'm very concerned about the possibility of continuing forced masking of students in grades K through 12 in the classroom. We support hand hygiene practices, temperature checks, and desks 3 feet apart. However, we do not believe that it's time to consider the end game. We believe it is within the rights of individual families to choose whether or not their children should wear masks. As of today, vaccines are readily available for anyone 12 and over, and 70% of Washingtonians have received at least 1 shot. It is now time to consider the end game when it comes to masking our youth. If not this year, then when? A year in the child's life is substantial in their development period. We can't continue to disregard their cries for help. On behalf of the children in Yakima County, thank you in advance for your help in advocating for mask choice in school during the 2021-22 school year. John Hammermeister. Please look at the research on both sides of the mask wearing. Enough is enough. The mandatory mask wearing is instilling fear into our children when school is supposed to be a safe place. If they're not fearful, then they're turning good students into rebellious students. They're constantly harassed by teachers for social distancing and proper mask wearing. They point out their pediatric hospitalizations are just 2.3% of the total COVID-19 hospitalizations, according to American Academy of Pediatricians statistics. They add that many children who get the coronavirus are less symptomatic or asymptomatic. How is a mask going to be any better next month than it is right now? And we have not been required to wear a mask for over a month.
Okay, from Joel and Mallory Hubretsky. I am emailing in regards to students, teachers having to wear masks per mandate for the 2021-2022 school year. This should be a mask choice of individuals depending on what they would like to do and feel comfortable doing. This shouldn't be something mandated for our students who we know are very rarely being affected by COVID. It is also crazy the tests that have been done on children's masks after wearing them for one day, all the germs they are breathing by wearing the mask, which in a lot of cases is more harmful to them than COVID is. Please consider giving students and staff a choice to wear a mask or not. Thank you for taking the time to read this email and concerns we have. From Tracy Coles, I am writing this email regarding the mask mandate in schools. My daughter is going to be a sophomore in a local public school, and my husband and I are very upset with the fact that our daughter, who has asthma, has to wear have her face covered while in school. It should be a choice made by the parents of these children whether to wear a mask or not. It should not be a decision that is made by the local health department. If a person is scared of COVID, then they are the ones who should mask up or stay home, not the ones who choose to live their lives in the way they choose. It is time to get back to normal and start seeing the beautiful faces and smiles of our children, not with masks on. Hashtag mask choice. From Aaron and Sarah Washburn, we are ready to share our concerns as we move forward into the 2021-2022 school year. These are not concerns of children getting to interact in schools. These are not concerns of children getting to interact in a school setting. These are concerns on the children, our children, getting to interact strictly as children. The wearing of masks has to be a parent choice. We understand that COVID is a virus and there are concerns across the board within it. But there are concerns with every other cold, flu, disease, or virus that has come our way. Parents have been given the right to make choices based upon individual family values, religions, and beliefs that we see fit for our children. This should be no different. You as a Department of Health have no legal right to tell us or our children that they have to wear a mask to receive a vaccination that we do not believe in. There are plenty of research by physicians to support that masks are not necessary, nor should they be required. Vaccinations are a family's choice and a parent's choice. This is not something that should be promoted within schools to encourage the bullying by students to get their students to get. You as a department have overstepped your grounds and are losing faith from the community that you are actually concerned about our well-being. Throughout the last months, children have been at pools, playing in parks, having sleepovers, going to camps, and the list can certainly go on about the activities they have been enjoying freely. To put them back in masks simply to have control in their environment will do nothing to confuse them and hinder their growth of their immune systems. Isolating children and keeping them from playing freely with each other in the gym, out on the playground, or seeing each other smile within the halls will have nothing but negative effects. For those of you reading this, understand the burden the last year has caused on the children of the community, and if you are willing to put them through this again, we simply do not understand how you can sleep at night. Our children need to be unmasked and in school. It is our God-given right, our choice to know what is best for our kids. If parents want their children to wear masks to protect themselves, that is also their choice and God-given right. It is our job as a community, not to mention our constitutional right, to allow freedom of choice and teach our children how to have respect for each other. From Daleen Ackerman, I would like to give input into the discussion on mask mandate for students in our schools. This should be a personal choice of students, parents, not government or agencies. This was never the intended role of government, and these kinds of decisions should be up to the individuals and families. I urge you to fulfill your duty and uphold our liberties. From Heather, Brady's mom, please unmask our children for the sake of their physical and mental health. My son has asthma and already has a hard time breathing. He also gets anxiety, so the mask does not help with him with that either. He is a very social kid, and I am grateful that we have been able to keep him at school that was full-time this year. But please hear the parents out. The masks are doing more harm than good. Please look at other states and follow them.
Charlie and Tony Ballard, over 50 scientific studies conclude masks do nothing to prevent the spread of illness by Daily Veracity staff, July 26, 2021. Even Dr. Fauci at one point admitted masks were theater. A fairly recent study from Denmark involving a sample size of 6,000 participants found the following. There was no statistically significant difference between those who wore masks and those who did not when it came to being infected by COVID-19 by Daily Veracity staff, July 26, 2021. More importantly, please consider the psychological impacts on our children. Mandatory masking of our children who at this time being severely ill due to COVID-19 is rare. According to the American Academy of Pediatrics 7/26/21, children were 0 to 0.26 of all COVID-19 deaths, and 8 states reported 0 deaths. We feel mandatory masking is the wrong decision. Nikki and Jake Wiles, thank you for your hard work and diligence throughout the last year plus. We are so grateful for your leadership. As parents of 8-year-old twins going into 3rd grade, we are concerned with the possible continuation of forced masking in the classroom. When it comes to the health and well-being of our family, we as parents know best. The vaccine has been readily available for all people 12 and up in Yakima, and we are now ready for the next step. All families have had to make decisions and best choices during this time. We would like to be free to continue to make best choices for our children for the upcoming school year. Please consider making masks optional for K through 12 age children in the classroom. Each family is fully capable of choosing what is best for their kids. Therefore, it is time to let families make decisions rather than blanket government mandates. The children of Yakima County, thank you for your help in advocating for mask choice in school during the 2021-2022 school year. Travis Allen, I don't support universal student masking for several reasons. However, I can tell you from personal experience that my son spent the year dealing with a persistent mask-induced fungal infection. He was also riddled with headaches at the end of each school day due to constant pressure on his ears from wearing both glasses and a mask around his ears. As recently as April, he was forced to wear a mask during an outdoor jogathon and became breathless within the first 5 minutes due to the oxygen deprivation. This situation alone was so alarming that we felt we had no other choice but to excuse him from any future cardio activity because unfortunately they all required a mask. Forcing anyone to wear a mask while exercising is criminal, yet it was supported by all the experts until just recently. We do not have enough evidence to conclude that masking is necessary for children, and based on our experience, all-day mask wearing causes more harm than good. It is my hope that you will allow parents to make the choice whether masking is necessary for their own children, rather than enforcing a one-size-fits-all mandate. If not, I fear we are going to injure our kids beyond repair. Dwayne and Loretta Larson. As grandparents, we are deeply concerned that our grandchild may be required to wear a mask at school again this year. Our state has spent the last 16 months neglecting our youngsters in the name of saving grandma. They have missed school, graduations, birthday parties, and countless other joyful experiences. We are here to tell you that it is time to give these children their joy and freedom back by allowing families to decide whether their children will wear a mask at school. We do not want our grandchild or any other child spending another minute under the mask in order to save us. We are vaccinated. Instead, let's allow them to live their lives again by giving all families the freedom of choice. James Stevens. Interest has been shown for an unsavory endeavor by pods of persons interested in mandating, i.e. requiring children to wear masks if attending school. The only science that supports this oppressive mandate of children and young adults wearing masks to prevent the spread of the Wuhan virus is political science and pseudoscience. Our personal business practice of oral health medicine is dedicated to presenting and practicing according to scientific, clinical, and research study of the psychological dynamics of the transfer of gaseous airflow in the human system. Masks severely interfere with that free exchange. The human body functions as an incredible biological system when allowed to operate as it was designed. Mask interferes with that function. Children and young adults are developing that psychological system, and their future development is placed in jeopardy when that psychological system is not allowed to operate as their genealogic mapping would dictate. Psychologic sensors will fail to operate effectively because the stimulus to those sensors have been altered. Many other fine biologic systems that are crucial to optimal development will also have compromised development. They're being ignored, just as the health and well-being of these children and young adults are being ignored to favor a dangerous political gesture whose sole purpose is to provide a very visible demonstration of power and oppression, wearing masks. Children are virtually not at risk when the Wuhan virus, so who are the masks supposed to protect while these children are being physically abused, as if they were beaten or sexually molested? Where is the Child Protective Services when these children are being placed in harm's way by persons who have either been indoctrinated with a political agenda, simply ignorant of scientific fact, or devoid of the ability for simply cognitive reasonings? The mask. The Wuhan virus size is 0.125 microns. The hole in mass range from 0.3 microns to 17 microns, at least twice the size of the virus. Flies are a quarter inch. Holes in chicken wire where fences are 0.5 inch. As you can see, trying to protect from the Wuhan virus with masks is like trying to keep flies out of your house with screen doors made of chicken wire. And smaller holes or double masking only magnifies the effects of the O2 and CO2 exchange for these children and young adults. Specific biologic and scientific documentation supporting my statements are replete. I would suggest that the health board inform themselves before enforcing a mandate that may very well bring justified lawsuits for child abuse.
From Samantha Anderson, unmask our children. This should be an individual choice. Countless schools across the country have successfully operated without masks and no major outbreaks. According to the NIH, masks can cause adverse health effects. We are impacting an entire generation's mental health and social behavior. From Jeanette CD, the efficacy, please advocate for mask choice in our school. Please note these facts. The efficacy of masks is questionable in preventing viral spread. Extended mask wearing can cause physical problems such as headaches, brain fog, shortness of breath, skin problems, sore throats, runny nose in some people. Some people experience emotional disruptions while wearing masks, such as anxiety, claustrophobia, and depression. Mask mandates are not laws and so cannot be enforced by law. The only means by which to enforce them are through intimidation and psychological manipulation. An example, can't participate in school activities, shaming, inducing fear. All of these methods are abusive. People have an inherent right to informed consent regarding the wearing of devices that may cause the problems listed in points 2 and 3 and to make personal health decisions. A letter of exemption can be obtained from lawyers by parents, which will allow a child to not be required to wear a mask in school. This letter also specifies that the child is not to be threatened, intimidated, or singled out in any way if not wearing a mask. Since a letter from a lawyer can protect a child from having to wear a mask, does this not speak to the unlawful status of the mask mandates or any other health-related mandates? The answer to point 7 is yes. Therefore, in attempting to enforce a mask mandate, the health board, school board, and all associated with such a mandate subject themselves to the liability of a civil lawsuit that may be either brought by a single parent or a class action suit. The issues about mask wearing and mandates have been very divisive over the last 18 months. In light of 8 facts listed above, please, as a health board, offer unbiased and scientifically sound information, give the board's collective advice, but refrain from issuing mandates. Please protect health and freedom by allowing parents to make an informed decision and giving them the choice of whether or not they want their child to wear masks in schools. It is time to bring normalcy back to our community and to our children. From Diane Townsend, Dear board members, I'm a 73-year-old grandmother of 4, and I am deeply concerned that my grandchildren will be wearing masks again for the coming school year. Our state has spent the last 16 months neglecting our youngsters in the name of saving grandma. They have missed school, sports, graduations, birthday parties, and countless other joyful experiences. I am here to tell you that it's time to give those youngsters their joy and freedom back by allowing families to decide whether their children will wear a mask at school. I don't want my grandchildren or any other child spending another minute in a mask in order to save me. I am vaccinated. Instead, let's allow them to live their lives again by giving them freedom of choice. From Julie Huffman, as parents, we believe it should be our choice regarding our children wearing a mask at school. We take our health seriously, but we feel like wearing a mask all day negatively impacts the learning environment. Please take this into consideration when deciding if all students need to wear a mask. From Luke Anderson, take the masks off our children. Do not let fear guide your decision to mask the faces of those who are the most resilient to this virus. Do not let few scarred and cowardly individuals dictate the solution of the majority. Do not let those who only think of their social perception and cancellation of loud and extreme segment of the population get away with this lunacy again. Let's move on. Let's get back to normalcy. It is not the time to overact and overcompensate for health and safety measures that are worse than the actual problem itself.
Gene Mendoza, the Friends of Toppenish Creek and the Yakima Health District Board of Directors to keep these issues on the table for discussion. Number 1, death rate from COVID-19 in the upper Yakima County are approximately 157 per 100,000, while the death rate in the lower valley Yakima County are approximately 200 per 100,000. Friends of Toppenish Creek has tried twice to get the Yakima Health District Board of Directors to address possible poly and perfluoroalkyl substance, PFAS, in Yakima County. There was no response. We now learned that these substances were used down the Yakima Training Center and that one well at the training center tested above EPA threshold. The Sela airstrip, which was at 103 parts per trillion. Friends of Toppenish Creek asked the YHD to request testing of biosolids that are applied to croplands for PFAS. Number 3, Friends of Toppenish Creek encourages the Yakima Health District to take a close look at potential public health consequences before the agency approves a plan to compost agricultural waste at 1574 Natchez Weenass Road. Friends of Toppenish Creek outlined our concerns in a comment letter and wish to add this concern. If the facility uses wastewater from fruit processing operations, the contaminants in the wastewater will become part of the compost. And then Dave Carson. Parents should have the right to send their kids to school with or without masks if the parents choose. The science shows that kids are the least vulnerable to COVID, most with less symptoms than even a cold. With every adult vaccinated, who wants one? There is no longer a risk bringing it home to vulnerable parents or grandparents. Please leave it up to the parents. I will not be sending my kid to a school that requires a mask. Thank you. And that is it.
I have a quick question about the comments that were received this morning. In my email, I received around 2:40 p.m. an updated agenda with the 2 new topics that were submitted for mask guidance in schools and hospitalization and deaths, item number 14. However, I feel like my instincts tell me that there was some sort of petition for people to submit written comments for mask guidance in schools. So can you tell me, Ryan, when did you start receiving these comments?
Yeah, so we started receiving them about the middle of towards the end of last week.
Okay.
So
And
both majority came in this week.
and when were you informed about adding the 2 new items to the agenda?
So both of those items are Commissioner McKinney's items, and she sent those to me last Tuesday. However, I was out of the office all last week. She did receive a response auto reply that I was out of the office till Monday. And so on Monday, or on Friday, she did inform, when the agenda went out, she did inform Victoria that She had sent me an email on Tuesday. And so then on Monday, we discussed it. There was an additional item that another board member had wanted on the agenda on Friday after the agenda went out. Another board member had another item that they wanted. So we discussed that item with the person, that board member, on Monday or on Tuesday when they finally answered our questions, and that was not added to the agenda. And so that's why the agenda went out yesterday, because we're waiting for the other board members' information on what they wanted on the agenda.
Okay, and the only concern I have is that we've only received comments predominantly from the public that don't want children to wear masks in school. So I'm just concerned that we haven't heard from proponents of mask wearing in school to make an informed decision and to take all the viewpoints into account to make decisions today. Thank you.
I guess I would say, Nalia, that activism goes both ways. And if people want to express their opinion, they should be able to express their opinion. Their opinions are just that, their opinions. And many parents in our community feel very strongly about this topic. And so I think they're expressing their views.
I agree. And I welcome all public comments, and I want to thank everybody for writing us today. Thank you.
Guess I better unmute myself. Let's move forward, and we'll move to item number 4, the consent agenda. The motion is to approve the items marked with an asterisk and are considered by the health board to be enacted all by one motion. The June 30, 2021 Yakima Health District Board of Health minutes and the payment of the accounts payable and payroll issued in June 2021 in the amount of $875,360.22. Is there a motion?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
And that was
I will
Mayor
second
Byers.
that.
Mayor Byers, sorry.
I will second that, Commissioner Lindy.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as submitted. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you much. We'll move on to item number 5, board business with Director Andre Fresco.
Thank you, Commissioner Henderson. Good morning to the board. Good morning to those who are following us, and thank you for the public comments. I'll keep my comments brief because obviously we've had many comments today. I'd like to begin by recognizing Dr. Yucca for his service to Yakima County and to our board and our health district. In a time of great upheaval and difficulty, he was willing to become our interim health officer, and I want to thank him and recognize his service. We've created a plaque for him. I don't know if you can see that, but I can read it. Dr. Larry Yucca, Health Officer, in recognition of health leadership and public service to the citizens of Yakima County. So I want to thank him for his time with us, our anticipation, and we will be bringing that to your attention today for a contract for Dr. Barg. And I just wanted to recognize, in the midst of a very difficult response, Dr. Yucca was willing and able to serve us well. Thank you, Dr. Yucca.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Additionally, I wanted to discuss the recognition of increasing levels of COVID in our community. Many of the people who made comments talked about wanting to return to pre-pandemic normalcy. And I recognize their hope and their interest in that being possible, but we're still in the midst of a pandemic. I was hoping that during summer, with more activities outside, warmer weather, and certainly increased vaccinations, that we would see actually reduced numbers, and we did at the beginning, but our numbers are steadily increasing, and we now have a dramatic increase in cases. This has a lot to do with the Delta variant. The Delta variant, as I understand it, is far easier to spread. It finds hosts more easily. So we are seeing a dramatic increase in cases. And so while I know that people want this to be over and they want us to return to what is referred to as normalcy, we're not anywhere near that. We're in the middle of a COVID outbreak, and I don't think that Yakima is in any way safe at this point. I'm grateful that we're not seeing the levels of death.
Dr. Fresco, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you able to hear me? Well, I
Yes.
just want to assert that when you make statements like that, that's a subjective opinion on your part. So when you say that we're still in the midst of a pandemic because people are still catching COVID, those folks who are catching it are unvaccinated by majority and have had the opportunity to get vaccinated and have chosen not to. So by saying that we're still in a pandemic because unvaccinated people are catching COVID, that would lead you to logically, if I hear you right, to say that we are going to stay in a pandemic until everyone who you believe should get vaccinated versus those who've made a choice. So I want to be clear where you are coming from a health policy, because this is supposed to be voluntary, but what you're implying by your comment is that this is actually not going to be voluntary, that we're going to stay in a pandemic until everyone has received the vaccine. So can you clarify your comments for me?
Well, I'm really not following, man. I don't think it's subjective to say that we have an increase in cases. It's fact that we have an increase in cases. And if people choose not to be vaccinated and they become sick, then they're sick. That's true of any communicable disease. That's true of any illness. If people choose to make decisions, as you say, the freedom not to vaccinate, that's their choice. But that doesn't change the fact that the increase is dramatic and it endangers them. And their lives and the lives of those around them and the lives of those whom they can spread to is important to me. So I'm not going to turn my back on those who choose not to get vaccinated. They're still vulnerable. They're still getting sick. They're still getting hospitalized. And our job at the health district is to ensure their safety. So I don't think it's subjective to
It's
say,
their job. It's their job. It's
Ma'am, please.
every individual's job to ensure their own safety. And so
Please let me
we've had a
finish.
vaccine that's readily available for 6 months now.
Please let me
6
finish.
months.
Please let me finish, ma'am. One of the responsibilities of a public health district and a governmental public health agency is to ensure the safety and well-being of all peoples in a community. The choices that people make are obviously their choices, but that is the distinction between personal health and community health. We have many things that we do to ensure and protect the public's health. And one of the comments that was made in the comments by the public was that we don't have public health laws, or this is the first time this has happened. We have a history over 100 years of creating public health laws that are incorporated to ensure people's safety, whether that's groundwater safety, clean air safety, stoplights, speeding laws. And we have incorporated into our law in Washington State a responsibility to ensure and protect the decrease of communicable diseases. So if people choose not to get vaccinated, that's certainly a choice. But the reality is that their choices impact this entire community. And currently, we do not have as high a vaccination rate to ensure that this spread is contained. So their choices are impacting everyone else's choices. And so I don't think that's subjective whatsoever.
So no, it is, because what you're saying is that you disagree with their choice. And so you want to extend the label of us being in an emergency situation in a pandemic until enough people come around to your belief of where we need to be as far as vaccination rates.
Well, my personal opinion is secondary to the safety of this community. I would love for this community to be absolutely past COVID. I would absolutely love us not to have any more cases. I would love not to have a communicable disease outbreak. That would be my hope and my commitment and my work every day. But the reality is that those numbers are increasing. And the reality is that the choices people make are impacting the safety of our entire community. Because again, this is not just a personal health issue. If you are contagious and unvaccinated, then you can spread it to someone else who is contagious and unvaccinated. And so
who also had the choice to get vaccinated or not. So you are choosing to say that you're going to protect people from something that you believe is a threat that they have not yet perceived. They don't perceive it's a threat. And so you perceive that it is, and you know better than they do what's best for them as a public health official.
Well, I think that many governmental public health officials have the responsibility to keep people safe. We don't question why there's concerns around drunk driving. There's absolutely the responsibility of law enforcement to ensure the safety of our roads. It's absolutely the responsibility of administrators at schools to ensure the safety of children in schools. And it's absolutely the responsibility of a governmental public agency to ensure the safety and welfare of the entire community. Yes, that's exactly why we're here.
I agree, and that's why there are laws that the public body as legislature has actually passed, which prohibit people from drunk driving. It is illegal to drunk drive. It is not right now a legal requirement to get a vaccine. But what you're saying is that anyone who's unvaccinated is inherently and presumed to be a threat to themselves and others, and you know better than they do. So I think from the comments that we're hearing, people are frustrated because they have made a choice, and it's supposed to have been a voluntary choice, but now we have public health officials who are saying that you didn't choose the answer that we wanted you to choose, so we're going to continue to extend these mandates until you make the decision that we want you to make.
The mandates are being extended, and by the way, I would share that the mandates are being stated or extended at the state level are precisely because there are more cases. If there were not more cases, I don't think that you'd see more restrictions.
Are we trying to eradicate COVID, period? Or were we just trying to keep people from ending up in the hospital in mass numbers until those people who wanted to get vaccinated could?
I think that we're trying to contain a deadly illness that continues to mutate. And the problem is that as it continues to mutate, if people aren't protected, they're more vulnerable and they themselves can spread to others. So this is really is.
Point of order. Can I just please recommend that Director Fresco please finish his report. A lot of the other board members have not had an opportunity to speak, and Robert's Rules of Order does require that before another member speaks or speaks again, all the other people have had the opportunity to make a comment.
I'd be very happy to defer to any other health board member who would like to also question Director Fresco about his comments.
I'm ready to listen.
Dr. Fresco, I have simply a question, not a comment.
Certainly.
You talked about the increase recently because of the Delta variant. I'm wondering, tell me what percentage of the new cases in Yakima are actually identified as the Delta variant?
I
don't think we have, this is Dr. Yeka.
Yes,
I don't
please.
think we have that for Yakima County. We do know the state thinks that right now, 90% of the new cases are probably the Delta variant. We're seeing this throughout the whole country. It's over double the infectious rate of the previous COVID we've been seeing. So I would suspect Yakima's the same because of the rest of the state. It'd be very similar.
Thank you, Dr. Yerka, but I would like to know if we can get a percentage.
We're not able to do that, Mayor Myers. What happens with the state level is they sequence a certain percentage of our positive cases, and then they send those on for sequencing to determine which variant it is. So when we say that we have X amount of this variant, it's actually, it doesn't mean that that's the definitive amount that we have in this area. It just simply means we have it, and it kind of shows the prevalence of which one we have over more than others. And there's people at the state level who are looking at this, and with their projections with epidemiology are able to predict that a large portion of the cases in Washington state right now are the Delta variant.
So thank you, Ms. Sexberry. So my question still is there a way that we are able to track the percentage in our county? That's my question. Do we have a percentage? And if not, are we able to do that separately? That's all I want to know.
No, Mayor Byers, I don't believe that we personally have the ability to do that. The bottom line is that people are getting sick at a dramatic increase. And this is, by the way, when we have a lot of people on vacation, people outside in great weather. I suspect that our concern is that this could be even worse during the fall when people are indoors and it gets cold.
Thank you.
So it is possible, Andre and Melissa, that our sampling is subject to sampling error, and that the Delta variant might be higher or lower than what we're stating, obviously.
Yes, and it's very delayed because this is weeks. So the Delta variant is going very quickly. So yeah, it's probably worse than we think. You're right.
Other comments?
Yeah, I actually have a question. When we determine if the pandemic is ongoing, are we only looking at the people that chose not to get vaccinated, or are there other factors that you're looking at? Because based on what I was hearing, Commissioner McKinney was trying to imply that if you correct me if I'm wrong, that people have had the opportunity to be vaccinated, but they didn't, and now I guess I didn't know where she was going with that, but I want to know from either Dr. Yucca or or Mr. Fresco, what factors are you looking at when you say that the pandemic is ongoing?
Well, the pandemic is ongoing, and we're into the state is going into the fifth wave, and it's going up. You know, since I spoke to you the 30th of June, our hospitalization rates are over doubled. We were below 100 at that time, at that meeting, I think in the 90s per 100,000. We're 220 some, I think now.
229 per 100,000.
Okay, and so, you know, we've doubled, and it's not going down yet. We don't know. You know, it's hard to predict. They're finding now with the Delta variant, these reports from CDC, that even the vaccinated are getting some more breakthroughs, and they can be infectious. Before the breakthroughs, they didn't think they were infectious. So their science is changing because of the variants, and what we're doing changes because of the variants and how they're reacting. And so, you know, I'm very disappointed. I wasn't expecting the fifth wave. I don't think anyone was, but we're dealt with it. We have to deal with it and protect our community, like Andre said.
Yes, we're entering into a phase of preventable tragedies, where if we chose to take advantage of vaccinations that were available to us for free, if we chose to have higher uptake of vaccinations, I think we would have less of a spread of a dramatic new type of variant. My concern is that this will only get worse, and I'm sharing that those who choose not to get vaccinated, that's their choice, but they're still our priority. We're concerned for their safety. We want to ensure their well-being, and we want them to escape any dramatic health repercussions from this illness. Happy to entertain any other questions.
The only thing that I might ask or add is that my understanding is that with the Delta variant, at this point, the vaccines that we have in place are still effective in combating this variant. Is that not correct?
Yes, they are effective. We're seeing more breakthrough though, and the people that have been vaccinated, if they get a mild case, it looks like they can spread it. Probably not very much, but this is concerning.
Commissioner Linda, you're correct that I think the vaccinations, any of the vaccinations will protect. But what
Yes.
we're understanding is that the reason that the Delta variant is so concerning is that it's my understanding that it's far easier to transmit. So it's becoming smarter, if you will, at finding a host, which is dramatically concerning because that means that the easier it is to transmit, the quicker it'll transmit. Yeah. That's our concern. And Dr. Yucca, I defer to you on that.
Yeah, an example in the previous COVIDs, about everyone that was infected 2 to 3 people. It looks like with the Delta, it's up to 7 to 8 people for everyone that gets the disease. So it is a little different. But the thing is, the vaccines are very good at protect, and people have to remember, it's very good at protecting you from getting hospitalized and death. And that's why it's so important.
Dr. Yucca, so you said you were curious that this is what it's done. So has this virus behaved much differently than any other coronavirus in that it's mutated and this is a surprise?
No, it's it was a surprise that we were getting this fifth wave, especially in the summertime. and people being more outside and everything. That was more of the surprise than anything.
That science hasn't changed. The fact that viruses evolve and mutate, that science is still the same.
Pardon me, I didn't quite understand.
So the science that tells you that this is not unique to the coronavirus, that they mutate, that part of the science hasn't changed. You mentioned science has changed, so I just wanted to clarify.
No. The Delta virus has a more. It has different characteristics than the other ones, and that's why it's changing the way we're reacting.
No, and I would agree, Commissioner McKinney, the science hasn't changed, but it is interesting that we have so many people who are choosing not to take advantage of a safe alternative that will keep them from getting ill.
No, I didn't mean to interject. The science is not changing. No.
What science has changed? You just mentioned the science has changed. Right?
No, the science hasn't changed. The thinking of the reaction of how the virus is reacting. You have to change your thinking of the things you CDC just released that they're more concerned now of spread and more deaths and in the future.
So that's it for me, Commissioner Anderson. Thank you.
I would thank you for all the discussion and comments. We do need to move on. So I would move to number 6, financial report by Chase. Chase on.
Sorry, I had myself on mute there. Good morning, everybody. I'm going to start talking about my audit, and then I'm going to review a budget amendment, propose that today, and hopefully adopt it at the next meeting. For our audit, things are moving along. We've done the majority of the heavy lifting, but we haven't quite got things wrapped up. It has a lot to do with, 2020 being just a long, tough year. I honestly wouldn't expect our audit to be any different. Hoping to have the audit. I'll have another update for that at the end of August. So I would like to present a budget amendment. I've been speaking about this just about every month for the past couple of months. I understand today is probably a bad time, but we never have a good time for these kind of things. So yes, please, would you please bring that up? So again, I would like to present that today. If you have any questions or comments, please let me know. We can certainly talk after between now and the next meeting. However, I am hoping to have a budget that you all feel comfortable and are ready to approve by our next meeting. So looking at this sheet here, we have as of June, our actual year-to-date expenses is about 5.7, and our allocated budget through June is just under 4 million. So we're through June, just about over $2 million in our budget. Looking.
Pardon me, I'm sorry to interrupt. May I ask Stephanie to increase the size of the page for our, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, yes. So looking through the end of December for operating expenses, and I would like to say right now that when we are asking for these increases in our budget, we are having corresponding revenue sources. These increases in our budget we are not asking to spend any additional reserves or flexible dollars. That's not the case. We're just trying to open some room for expenditures to do the things that the state and FEMA would like to do. So looking at our operating expenses, that's about 11.5 from throughout the entire year. So January to December, we're expecting our operating expenses to be about 11.5. We are expecting mobile vaccinations. Mobile vaccinations will be funded by FEMA through DOH, Department of Health. And those, we are estimating those to be about $400,000 a month for 5 months. That's $2 million. And finally, our contingency piece of $1 million that we would be funding the Federal Department of Health. This is just a little extra buffer, so to speak, so that if hopefully not, if things do go bad, that we will have room for increased testing or increased vaccination.
Nelia, could you please mute?
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
So again, not asking to spend any reserves. Would be just money that is available to us as it becomes available. We want to make sure that we have plenty of room to operate if additional funds are sent our way. So we have an projected expense of about $14.5 million for year-end 2021. We have an adopted budget of $7.5 million. So we are approximately $7 million over our budget as we see.
James, question for you. Why does the second half of the budget spend more than the first half of the budget? Is there expenses in the second half of the year that aren't incurred in the first half of the year? If you look at June 21 at 5.7 million and you simply doubled that, you don't get to 14.5 million. So why is the second number significantly larger than the first?
Well, Dr. Atterbury, the operating expenses, if you can see there, this would be for the entire year. Our annual budget of 14.5 million. We're not adding 14.5 to our original 7.5. So this is our,
I'm just saying, if you divided the year in half and said you spent half the money in the first half of the year, you spent half the money in the second half of the year, why are you spending more in the second half of the year? What line items do you have in the second half that you didn't have in the first half?
Well, we have the mobile vaccination, the FEMA for $2 million, and then the contingency for $1 million. The operating expenses of 11.5 is June doubled up. So that's your, if you're looking at operating expenses, that would be for our annual operating expenses, not just the last half of the month or the year, excuse me.
And you didn't have mobile vaccination going in the first half of the year?
We do have mobile vaccination, but that is the funding is not passing through us. The funding is going directly from Department of Health. So that is not a pass through for us, and it hasn't been.
If I may add to Chase, Dr. Atterbury, when we adopted our budget last year, not anticipating some of the realities of what we had to spend money on. So our goal here again is not to, as Chase appropriately pointed out, not to spend reserves, but it is to increase our adopted budget by our board so that we're living within the budget that you approve.
Okay. Any other questions? We move to the next page. So this is, can you zoom out a little bit? There we go. Oop, in a little bit. So these are kind of our line items as we would see. We would have additional staff. The other thing is our health officer is flowing up into our staff hours. Additional promotions, supplies for the test sites. Of course, a very large professional services for testing and vaccination. A piece for test sites. And then the next page, please. And any operating facility test sites that we may need.
And James, would it be possible, or sorry, Chase, would it be possible to get the salaries divided out or a separate spreadsheet to look at the distribution of salaries? Because having it as one chunk doesn't allow you to see where the itemization is.
I'm sorry, doctor, do you mean by person or by program?
By program, by person, just an itemized list. And that way we could see where we're spending the salaries.
I will have to discuss that. Doctor, I understand salaries are public items, but they are still very sensitive in nature. So I don't know where we would fall.
Executive session then. I mean, I guess I'm just questioning whenever I see lump sums that are large, I always like to look at the granular distribution of those sums.
Sir, we're happy to discuss those with you. The reality is that the changes that we're requesting really have to do with our COVID response and not our traditional adopted budget, which we've already done. This really, as Chase mentioned, I think the salaries, a lot of what we receive are contract budgets from the vendors, but we can certainly share that and break that down because these are dramatically large numbers. And I recognize that we're talking about adopting a very large budget. This is the worst case scenario circumstance. So I think that that's fair, and we can share that with you.
Yeah, I just think that it's important when you're dealing with large sums to look at them in a granular nature. And that way you'd say, okay, well, that's what makes up the large sum. But you can hide a lot of BS in large sums that aren't, in fact, you know, if you saw them granularly, you might have a pause, I guess.
We can work on something. Thank you.
Do you
Any other
anticipate,
questions?
do you anticipate that we could have that prior to actually then, you mentioned, Chase, that this was a proposal you wanted us to consider for adoption for the following meeting. So I guess, so can we expect a formal amendment or supplement to break things down for us so that we have that information prior to the actual vote next meeting?
Yeah, I can certainly try to get you what you would like to see before that. Okay, and I would like just to review the last little bit. We were just looking at kind of the COVID expenditures, our actuals and projected. Next page, please. Last page. You scroll in a little bit. I just really want to focus in on the Department of Health funding. What we're looking at here is just showing that how we're expecting to fund all these activities. Can you scroll in, just zoom in a little bit, and we're looking at the bottom right, more or less. There we go. Yeah, so we have a big list, and as Andre kind of pointed out, when we adopted the budget for this year, for 2021, that budget was drafted in October of 2020. At that point in time, we had just $1 million available to us for COVID. So that's how we budgeted. We budgeted for $1 million for COVID. But looking at the projected expenses for COVID, it's closer to 10 million. So that's a lot what we have to do with this next budget, why it's so high. And this would be our plan for the remainder of the year on how to expend our COVID funding. And again, we're all the expenditures that we're looking for would be matched by some sort of funding. So we're not asking for reserves and those kind of things. So when we are showing these expenses, we are expecting them to be reimbursed by another agency. Okay, is there any other questions?
Motion to approve Chase's report and just an ask for the whatever information can be given to us by Director Fresco for my comments.
Well, I haven't quite officially given the financial report for June quite yet.
Oh, sorry.
This was just the introduction to the budget amendment. So we will certainly work on the next things that you guys need this next couple of weeks. Get that over to you and hopefully have we can get you comfortable with our ask. All right, yeah, move back.
I do have a question. So can you explain to me a little bit if the board chooses not to adopt this amendment that you are proposing, what are some services that will be impacted, or what how will this negatively impact the Yakima Health District?
Well, if we don't get this approved in the proper amount of time, things would come to a screeching halt. We are only allowed to spend 7.5 million. And will you move into my report? This would be helpful to show that. So will you move down into the income statement, please? One more page down. And will you zoom in slightly? Then yeah, move down and to the right. Thank you. So looking at our monthly expenses over on the far left, you see an actual of 987,000. That has been about our monthly expenses month over month for this year. Looking over to the right, we have a 2021 budget of 7.5 million. 6 months remaining, we have $1.7 million left. We are pretty much through June, and we've probably spent about close to $900,000 for June. So we have about $800,000 left for August. So it is imperative that even if this amount, even if the additional ask of an additional 7 million is unsatisfactory for the board, we would need some sort of increase to continue through August.
Yes, Ms. Duval, if I may add, no matter how much money we have in contingency, reserves, if you will, until the board approves our spending it, we do not have an amended budget, and we're not allowed to spend that money. So our goal here again is, as fiscal stewards of public dollars, is to ensure that you have what you need to allow us to operate. But without an increase, it's not only an issue of responding to COVID, it's an issue of paying the bills. Thank you.
Any further comments, questions?
Just really quickly, for the month of June, we had a gain of, we can just stay on this slide, on
I
the.
have a question. Thank you. Is there, for this particular part, this variance in the budget that you're asking for, is there a specific action we need to take today?
No, ma'am.
Separate from the budget? Okay, thank you.
Yes, yes, ma'am. Yes, we are presenting the budget, and now I'm moving into presenting the financials. I'll move very quickly. So we had an excess gain for the month of June of $661,000, bringing our year-to-date loss to $23,000. Our allocated budget is 3.7 million for revenue, and our actual for revenue is 5.7 million. Our allocated budget for expenditures is 3.8 million, and our actual expenditures is 5.7 million. So we were just about $2 million over our allocated budget for the period. Moving into the programs, move to the next page, please, and zoom out just slightly. Here's our programs. I'm not going to really address anything here unless there's questions. Next page, please. Same here. Any questions? Our next page, please. This is our COVID report for the month of June. And then our final page. So our cash flow here, we have cash of $7.7 million in the bank. We will be getting public funding at the end of July. So we'll be getting $500,000 on Friday. That will help increase our overall total cash and equivalents. Questions?
Further questions? Is that the completion of your report, Chase?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the financial report for the month of June 2021?
Move to accept the report of the financial report for June 2020. Mayor Byers.
Well, moved and seconded. Was that you, Dr. Atterbury?
Yes.
Thank you much. It's been moved and seconded to approve the June 2021 budget. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. We will now move on to department reports and Chief Operating Officer Ryan Ibach.
Okay, I've got two items to bring to the attention of the board. One has to do with COVID and school guidance, statewide school guidance. A couple weeks ago, we were told that the state is working on updating the school guidance for this coming fall, and it should be out by the end of the month. So we're expecting it to be coming out any day. Once that is out, then we'll be sending that to the superintendents, and our next meeting with the superintendents is next Thursday. And so we expect that guidance to be out by next Thursday, and then we'll be discussing that guidance with superintendents. We also continue to work with schools and answer any questions. Again, continuing to help the schools out with quarantining and outbreak investigations. And then the other item that I have is we are currently advertising for an accounting technician position, and we will soon be advertising for a temporary payroll / HR specialist. So if you know anyone interested, we are advertising for those two positions. And that's all I have.
Okay, well, thank you much. Appreciate it. Local Emergency Response Coordinator, Nathan.
Morning, everybody. So real quickly, with community-based test sites, our Sunnyside site will be closing at the end of the month, with the last day being on the 29th, so tomorrow, of operations. Obviously, we're seeing a increase in positivity cases, but also increase in people who are coming to our test sites. For example, our Yakima site alone, the week of June 6th, did 147 tests for that week, and saw an average infection rate of about 4%, or positivity rate of about 4%. For the week of July 18th, they did 548 tests for that week, and they were seeing a positivity rate of 14.96%. So with the increased need from the community, we will be continuing to keep the Yakima site open in partnership with University of Washington Lab. They will be helping with some funding opportunities, and then also Signal Health for staffing. So that site will remain open to the public for the near future. As far as our vaccine site, we will continue mobile teams through at least August. They will be 100% reimbursed through FEMA. And then also starting on the 31st, we will no longer have a site at the State Fair Park. So we will have 2 mobile teams operating 5 days a week, Sunday through Thursday, going and doing pop-ups and events throughout the county. And we will always be readjusting as needed with that. And that is all I have to report. Happy to take any questions.
Nathan, I just have a question. You mentioned that you were going to keep that testing site open for the near future. So I'm assuming that with Signal Health and UW Medicine that you would have had to have committed to some kind of time frame and contract. So what have you committed to?
Absolutely. So University of Washington is actually going to be coming in and not only supporting the site financially, but also with oversight management of the site. They will be starting that process mid-August as they need some time to get things all lined up on their end. So we will be signing a contract with Signal Health to continue that site until August 14th. At that point, we will transition and it will be managed and funded through University of Washington Lab, also coordinated very closely with the Yakima Health District. I'm sorry, Commissioner McKinney. I saw your lips move, but didn't hear any sound.
No, I didn't hear you state though how long UW Medicine, how long have you agreed to have them come? I still assume that there's been some kind of a discussion of a time frame.
So University of Washington Lab is committing to as far out as the first of the year or end of the year here. So we don't know, again, everything's scalable. So as we need from the community, we can increase and decrease and go out further or cut things shorter depending on what that need is. But that is what University of Washington is willing to set up and do.
And then my last question is, I do appreciate we've continued to see these the weekly reports on vaccines that rather unfortunately have been and actually terribly have been wasted. You know, we're reading a lot on a global scale of the need for vaccines across the world where they don't have as readily available the vaccine as we do in the United States. You know, the weekly report has consistently been 400, 500, 600 doses that are wasted each week. I think the last one, though, most alarmingly, this last week, over 1,200 doses were wasted. So my concern is what are we doing working with partners in the community to ensure that clearly we've reached at our point vaccine saturation in our community? How are we working to make sure those vaccines are not wasted to ensure that they are going to people who certainly, you know, want the vaccine? Because I have to imagine that we have a moral obligation to not destroy vaccine.
Absolutely. So 2-part answer for that. One of which is we're really coordinating on how much vaccine is getting ordered from the state. We're essentially serving as a hub, the Yakima Health District, with our leftover vaccine from the FEMA site. And we're not only supporting clinics as they need maybe some smaller orders, because if you order from the state, you have to order in these larger orders. that some smaller clinics struggle to get through by the time they expire. So we're able to send 10 doses over to a clinic or a pharmacy as needed. And that decreases that issue of vaccine waste. And we've not only supported clinics here in Yakima County, but from the west side of the state, we can't vaccine all the way to other neighbors to us. So we continue doing that. But the other thing that's interesting about the vaccine wastage is providers are more willing to waste vaccine nowadays. As in, before they would get a vial and they wanted to make sure that they had X amount of patients for that specific vial. We don't have mass influxes of people getting vaccine. So they may only get a couple patients. So they know they're going to waste doses, but they're still getting those couple patients vaccinated that day, opposed to pushing them off or pushing them to another provider. They're just opening the vial and getting them vaccinated. So that's also where you may see increase in vaccine. And unfortunately, again, we don't want to waste vaccine, but we also want to execute every opportunity we have to get a shot into an arm. And if that means opening a 10-dose vial to service 3 patients, then it's still a win at the end of the day. So we're seeing providers not only throughout the county, but really throughout the country move more to that model as we moved away from that large influx of people needing or wanting to go in and get that vaccine, if that makes sense.
Nate, are there people on the horizon trying to make single-dose vials or 3-dose vials, some smaller quantity?
My fingers are crossed. I talk every other week to providers throughout this county. I speak to the state every week, and that is one of the biggest things we're pushing for is single-dose vials or vials that you can open, take a dose out of, put it back in the fridge for a couple days. Until we get there, it's really difficult for providers to have that point of care vaccine. Right now, providers, some of them are trying to, they'll either the day before, they'll call their patient list for the next day so they can kind of iron out how many. The other providers will just ask as needed that day. So until we get to that model, which we don't have a good timeline on, it makes point of care vaccines incredibly difficult.
Dr. Atterbury, I'm sure you're aware that's one of the things that's preventing this becoming a regular clinic visit vaccination. It's not just the single dose, which would be dramatic in terms of increasing the eligibility for people to receive it at their physician's office, but also the administrative costs and staff costs, because it's again, we're in an emergency response, but until it is paid for through a normal clinical visit, it's going to be complicated.
Makes sense.
My understanding is when FEMA left, we were able to maintain over 20,000 doses. So can you explain why we would still have providers in our community ordering more vaccine if we have 20,000 here already? What's the thought process for that?
For the most part, they're not. For the most part, providers know to reach out to myself and the team, and we set up the transfer. So we're seeing little or small amounts, if any, of providers, and even on the state level, they know that we have that vaccine. So when providers reach out to the state to make an order, they usually end up referring them right back to us, and we coordinate with them to push that out.
Nathan, I've got a question. I want to refer you to the situation report that you send out regularly to us. Under the issue of Yakima County deaths, can you explain the difference between COVID-related deaths and COVID-positive deaths?
Melissa, do you want to tackle that question?
Yeah. So if a patient tests positive for COVID and there is a death, there's a system, the Washington Disease Reporting System, that will link those. That information gets sent out to the local health jurisdictions every morning to review and reconcile. So what we do when we have a patient who tested positive for COVID, whether that was yesterday or a year ago, and there was a death, we get the medical records for those individuals and we look through them, we compare them with the death certificate to see if it was a contributing factor with the death, if it was the cause of death, and was there something else that caused that death, and we reconcile those and classify either as COVID or non-COVID related. which is why you'll see the discrepancy between our internal numbers and the State Department of Health, because we go through and remove those that we don't feel were contributing factors to be COVID related.
Okay, very good. All right, thank you.
Any further questions? Hearing none. Thank you, Nathan. We'll move on to Dr. Yucca.
Good morning. We've already covered the things that I was going to cover about the Delta and our increased concern for the numbers we're seeing in our county. But since it's my last time officially, really enjoyed working with the staff for the last 8 months. You have a really dedicated staff. Andre and all of his people have really been great to work with, and they've worked over 1.5 years and trying times, and I just want to thank them for the great job they're doing, and I hope the board appreciates them because they're really doing a great job for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. And I know from my own experience with in the very beginning of this, when Dr. Everson left, we were in a scramble and a huge void there. And I do deeply appreciate you stepping in and filling that and keeping us in line here and on the straight path. So very much appreciate your work and your efforts.
Thank you. I would like to just say one thing on those letters. There's a misunderstanding that the board or the health district has mandatory masking ability. That's at the state level. And I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you. Well, thank you again, Doctor, and I appreciate it. And I hope you enjoy your extra time and find new adventures in life.
I will. I'm going to take a nice cruise next week in the state.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
We'll move to.
Thank you. I want to kind of jump back up because we move quickly from one to another. So
Okay.
first of all, thank you, Dr. Yucca. We do appreciate the time you've put in. I want to go back up to Ryan's report based on Dr. Yucca's statement, and that is that, we don't have local control in terms of a mandate, that's at the state level, which, I think we all understand. However, my question is, with as many of our residents are expressing a concern about any mandated masking in the school, what kind of information, communication really should be two-way? Like the state's going to tell us, they're going to give us their opinion at the end of the week, or their mandate at the end of the week. How often are we in communication with them saying, we have a large number of parents in our community who are voicing concerns about mandated masking and the health risks for children? How often are we communicating, with the state board or the people that make those decisions, what our constituency is saying?
Right. Yeah. And they're hearing statewide. They're hearing the same concern statewide. And we are on meetings, weekly meetings, statewide meetings as administrators of the Yakima Health District. And also there's a health officer call, a weekly health officer call too, where we're putting in input and letting the state know what we're hearing from our county. And
I think it would be helpful to me when you have those meetings to kind of maybe give us a verbal update of some of the content and what you're saying on behalf of the residents in Yakima. And, so we're hearing, what's happening on this end as well as what we hear from the state end.
Yeah, we can include that in part of the Board of Health update that we do, weekly update.
I think Dr. Yucca is I think correct in that a local health officer, as he stated very clearly, is not able to override a statewide mask mandate, but children returning to school and being required to wear masks is something that is actually inherently given as a choice, much like returning back to in-person to the superintendents. It does say clearly in the Department of Health guidelines that each local school district can determine how their children go back to in-person, which was the mandate by the governor. So In fact, there is an ability for schools to come up with their own return to school plans for in person. I think it was cited. We actually had 13 private schools in Yakima County who went against what the recommendation was from the Department of Health, and they decided to return to in-person learning, and you were required to approve their plan. So similarly, schools can come up with their own return plan, which could include voluntary masking, not mandatory masking, of their staff and of their children, and the health district would have the ability to still approve those plans.
I have a follow-up.
Actually, on the approval of the plans, we did mention on when those private schools did submit their plans that there were parts of the plans that did not meet the guidelines of the state.
Correct, and they were still able to return to school under their own terms, and that's what's important. So it is possible that a school can open under their own terms that they set for themselves, or in this case, a district.
And I know a lot of the superintendents, their concerns were liability, insurance purposes, meeting union contracts. And so I know that they needed something from the state level saying that there was approval.
They felt that they needed it, yes.
They did, although I think that there's a distinction to be made with the masking mandate that's currently in effect, which is a mandate, not a recommendation.
So if I,
Can I have my
Go ahead, Commissioner Lindy.
okay, thank you. So since we're on the topic, I've been made aware that the governor actually has a press conference at 10:30, and he's going to be talking about, among other things, masking in schools. I've been told. Now, my understanding is with the CDC guidelines that they are exactly that. They are guidelines. That they are not binding. I have the concern that at the state level, that when the Board of Health gets involved or the state gets involved, they're not guidelines, they're often mandates. And I don't think we can disregard the dozens of comments we got this morning. And I think they're really just the tip of the iceberg as far as it is regarding kids with masks in schools. I understand we want to keep people safe, but we also understand that the risk to kids is very low. We've talked about the statistics about, nearly zero hospitalizations, or maybe it is zero hospitalizations and deaths among school-age kids. And I've heard these concerns far beyond what was stated this morning. I've gotten this from parents in our communities. I've gotten it from teachers in our communities that are concerned about the inability to actually teach effectively and for their students to learn effectively. The masks, I know that COVID's a real thing, but if we're going to do something, then let's take other measures. We can encourage people to wash hands, which, by the way, medical professionals have told me is really the most effective way to prevent the spread of disease, rather than the masks themselves. But with the masks, we have the whole issue. I'll give you an example. Sunnyside School District, we're not alone, but this is a district where we have more than half of the kids that come into schools are coming from homes where they don't speak English in the home. And imagine trying to learn a new language with a mask on, so you cannot speak and you can't see other people enunciate properly. I think that's just one of the risks of this. So yes, if we need to take care of people, let's do it. But I don't think the masking is the right option. Let's. I would like to really encourage us as a board to push back against the State Board of Health and urge them not to take this measure to protect kids. If we want to have 3-foot distancing, fine. If we want to have, encourage the hand washing, fine. But the masks, we're not really thinking clearly on the full impacts of this. So anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, that is an agenda item under new business. So there'll be more discussion, I'm sure, on that item.
Okay.
All right.
Can I speak?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I just want if Dr. Yaka can come back on to give us clarification again. I know has said this many times about the ability for us to contract the recommendations, not expand them. Can you elaborate on that again, Dr. Yucca, so that you can remind us?
That's right. We have state mandates and we have to abide by those because they are mandates. If they are a state mandate, we don't know what's that going to be for the school year. But we are communicable disease in schools. We work with the superintendents. We don't dictate that what they do. Now, we can dictate a closure of a school when there's an outbreak. We can do things like that, but that's the only powers we really have in the school. We're consultants, and the local board really has nothing to do with the schools either. You can voice your concerns up to the OSPI and the superintendents, and that's fine. But there's not a direct mandate from our health department and the board to the schools. They're their own entity.
You are correct, Dr. Yucca. The superintendents do have the authority under the school guidance from the Department of Health. This board can make recommendations in support or against certain mandates. So the reason why this agenda item is on here is so that this board could potentially take action in support of certain plans that our superintendents are presently working on. And as Ryan has stated, there are ongoing conversations. And I do appreciate Mayor Byers bringing up the fact that we don't know what is being communicated on behalf of our community by Ryan or Director Fresco when they are actually having these conversations. So I do think it's important that we get an understanding of exactly what is being represented as the will of Yakima County when you're updating the Department of Health. But thank you, Dr. Yucca, for pointing that out, that it is the superintendents who ultimately have the control, and this board provides simple recommendations or guidance.
I've never seen a board give recommendations. I've seen the health officer, but not the board.
Pandemic.
Commissioner Anderson, I have things to share, but I'd like to wait until we're actually having that as board agenda discussion.
I was just going to suggest that. Let's continue with our reports, and then we can cover all of this conversation under new business. So I'm going to ask Melissa to continue.
Okay. So I just wanted to give an update on our STD cases. As community member Jeremy Hines said, that I had mentioned that we were up 240% on syphilis cases. That's a statewide, nationwide thing. I think a lot of it has to do with the pandemic, a lack of access to care, lack of being able to easily access testing. The health district has reopened our lobby area and has actually started our weekly free testing again, starting today. And so we offer free testing for HIV, syphilis, gonorrhea, and chlamydia, as well as treatment options for those individuals. And we're also we have been sending out messaging to our providers to talk about this increase in cases and to encourage them to test if they suspect or have exposures to these diseases. We are currently managing 7 active TB cases. I think that's up from 2 that we had last month, or I think we were at 5 last month, and now we're up to 7. So we're seeing an increase in that. And then I also just wanted to kind of address some of the public comments that came in as far as children not being really susceptible to COVID-19. And when, they're not being hospitalized, they're not dying from this, but we do know that children do still spread this disease and can infect people who are susceptible to this disease and cause harm to them, their grandparents, other people in this community. They do transmit. And we have had in Yakima County 7 cases of MIS, which is multi-inflammatory syndrome, multi-organ inflammatory syndrome, 7 cases of that from Yakima County, and 13 people under the age of 18 have been hospitalized due to COVID in Yakima County. And I believe that that's 13 too many kids to be hospitalized, and 7 of those, half of those, to have bad outcomes such as MIS with long-term effects. There's a lot of question on CO2 with kids and masks. CO2 is a fine enough molecule that will pass through your mask and not keep it within your body and then where you're inhaling it. But the mask, a surgical mask or cloth mask with 2 layers, does protect against COVID because of the size of the droplet being larger than CO2. So it helps prevent droplets spreading out, but CO2 is not trapped into your mask. And then also concerns about masks being dirty. It's always been the recommendation of the CDC to wash masks If they're soiled, and at least daily, and if it's a disposable mask, it's a one-time use. So I just wanted to clarify those things.
And that's your report?
Melissa, just a question for you. The 7 TB cases, are they related to one another or in direct proximity to one another, or are they all individual cases?
2 are from one household, the other ones are all not related.
Thank you. Good question.
And those are active TB cases, not including the latent TB cases that we found during our contact investigation.
Thank you, Melissa. Next, we will move on to Sean McGee.
All right, good morning, everybody. We've been pretty busy in environmental health, much like Yakima County Public Services. We've been going through some pretty significant upgrades in our permit management system. We're going updating this system to be able to accept applications and payments online. Although there's a couple of bugs being worked out on both ends, I think we're getting really close for that being live and efficient. We're also, incorporating some more mobile aspects to that system to allow our inspectors to log inspections and upload documents into a case file remotely and without internet connection or cell phone service, because we do venture out into the faraway borders of Yakima County from time to time. So it's exciting stuff. It's going to really increase our out in the field presence with our environmental health specialists, and less time doing paperwork in the office and more time getting to the services people are applying and paying for. So we're excited about that. We also received funding, additional funding from Department of Ecology Solid Waste, as they had some money left over for a junk car, nuisance junk car program. We worked with the Yakima County Code Enforcement to effectively use this money. We put kind of a project program together last second, but we were able to effectively remove 47 junk vehicles from around Yakima County. The goal is for Department of Ecology, us, and Yakima County Code, if they're on board, is to continue to slowly expand that program and hopefully keep that money present to aid in the additional removal of derelict vehicles. So we're excited about that as well. We think it went pretty well for such a last minute project that was put together, but we'll continue to work on that and develop that. And we're also, monitoring COVID-19 case activity, through our county, because we do have staff out in the field. We do have staff in close proximity to other folks inside restaurant kitchens. So we're, taking precautions to keep our staff and restaurant staff as safe as possible. And we're also kind of venturing out and seeing what the rest of the local health jurisdictions across the state are doing in terms of, field work and how they're keeping staff safe. So we want to just take every precaution we can to maintain the safety of our staff and the public. So, I will end there and happy to take any questions anybody might have.
Any questions for Sean? Hearing none, we'll move on to Lillian Bravo.
Thank you. So the Public Health Partnership Team continues to work on various chronic disease prevention programs, such as cancer prevention, increase in physical activity, and improved nutrition. Also, we have work related to the prevention of youth tobacco and marijuana use among youth. So we don't frequently talk about that. So I just want to let everyone know that those are some projects that we work on. I'm happy to expand on those at another time. But in regards to communications, we continue to provide information on the vaccine, testing, and of course the seasonal messaging, given that it's summer, around water, recreation, safety, and preventing foodborne illness as people get together and do summer activities. So other than that, that's the update that I have for you all today.
Wow, thank you. Any questions for Lillian? Hearing none, we're going to move on to our unfinished business. And I will turn that over to Ryan.
Yes,
Okay.
Mr. Anderson.
Before I
Oh, I'm
go
sorry.
on to the next agenda item, I have been asked to remind people that our next board meeting is a special board meeting, which is the second Wednesday of the month. So it'll be August 11th at 5:30 p.m.
Thank you.
Okay. So Stephanie, can you scroll down to the health officer contract? Okay, so here is a resolution for approving the contract for the health officer, Dr. Barg, who was chosen at the last board meeting. And just to quickly go over the items in this, this contract. Item 1 is the scope of work. And that's broken down into the different programs. So A is administrative services, scope of work. It will also be STDs, HIV, other communicable diseases, environmental health, assessment, and TB. If you can scroll down to section 2, keep scrolling. So section 2 deals with the provisional, Dr. Barg will be considered a provisional health officer under RCW 70.05.050. And so that section 2 deals with the requirements of a provisional health officer. So Dr. Barg will be working closely with the State Department of Health and state epidemiologist on meeting the requirements of a provisional health officer. Section 3 deals with access and availability. So it gives the you know, how soon that Dr. Barg needs to be in contact with the health district, or how to be in contact, and if he needs to be at the office, how long, you know, needs to be able to be present at the office. Item number 4 is compensation. So the compensation is $125 per hour with a 5% increase at August 1st of each day, or I mean, each year. It'll be a 5% increase on August 1st. This contract also states that August 1st would be Dr. Barg's first day. The total compensation would be a maximum of $75,000, which is an average of 50 hours per month at the $125 per hour rate. Dr. Barg would be considered a Yakima Health District employee because of liability insurance. That he would need to be a YHD employee. YHD will also reimburse Dr. Barg for any expenses incurred. The number 5 goes into the duration. So again, the term of the contract begins on August 1st. It'll be reviewed on December of each year. And then also section 5 does deal with if Dr. Barg decides to no longer be health officer, or the Board of Health no longer wants Dr. Barg as a health officer, the process to go through. Number 6 is the stipulations. 7 is modifications. So at this time, if there's any questions before we go on to a vote to approve the contract, I'd be willing to answer any questions anyone has. These also have, this contract has been reviewed by our attorney and has been reviewed by Dr. Barg.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry. To that extent, can you all hear me, by the way? I never know my mic is working here.
Yes.
Yes.
Two things in terms of this contract I have reviewed. There was number 1, as it relates to section 4, which is compensation. Please keep in mind that the compensation that has been identified as it is in this contract was the recommendation out from the staff. The determination related to the actual salary expenses, that is all a Board of Health decision. So just so we're clear on that, the identification here is what the recommendation was, but the final determination on dollars and cents process, that is completely and totally under RCW 70.05.050, the Board of Health decision related to that. Second, and when I made some suggested changes here on section 5 duration, when I read through this as it came out yesterday, there's actually a typo in line 2 that didn't come out the way that I had identified it. So I want to make sure we are clear on this, that in the second sentence, it starts the phrase, the term of office shall be established for Dr. Barg pursuant to 70.05.050. That actually should read, no term of office shall be established for Dr. Barg. Statutorily, Section 050 says specifically that there shall not be any term of office described. So that got missed in identification of what I had identified before. So please identify that correction as it relates to the resolution, that rather than the word "the term" should be "no term of office." And again, that is required statutorily, and any determination to remove Dr. Barg must meet all the notice and opportunity for hearing requirements under 050. So I don't know how that got missed. I wanted to make sure we fixed it before anybody approved anything. Unless anyone has a question for me on those issues, those were two that I saw that needed to be identified for the board.
So Mr. Elliott, you're saying the $75,000 was a staff recommendation?
My understanding is the information that is prepared in terms of per hour, the annual compensation. My understanding was that was information that was put together from the staff. I think it was related to either how prior Dr. Everson's had been or in discussions potentially with Dr. Barg. But again, these are Board of Health decisions related to setting the salary and the expenses. So I just want to make clear that no one has decided anything at this point in time. It's written up in this resolution for that purpose.
Thank you. And can someone remind me, I believe that when we entered into an agreement with interim health officer Yuka, that his salary was set at $4,000 a month, which would be $48,000 annually. So this $75,000 is markedly more than the $48,000 annually we were prepared to pay our current health officer. Am I remembering those figures correctly?
Yes, but Dr. Yucca does not cover our tuberculosis patients, which is a huge piece of what the health officer does. Dr. Barg would be covering that. Currently, it's being managed by Dr. Scott Lindquist.
Yeah, and Ryan can explain the process, but Commissioner McKinney, the other thing was that you had interest, the board had interest in our health officer having more time to have community relations and build bridges and certainly initiatives, which is what we were anticipating Dr. Barg to do. We didn't expect Dr. Yucca to be able to do that in the middle of an emergency.
So Andre, or so question, maybe this is for Mr. Elliott, but what were the, seems like a more appropriate comparison would be looking at the previous full-time health officer, well, or not full-time, but permanent, Dr. Everson. How do these figures for compensation compare with Dr. Everson's?
Yeah, Ryan, would you like to cover that? Because the board had asked us to work with Dr. Barg to come up with an acceptable contract.
Yeah, so Dr. Everson started out at $100 per hour and with an increase of 5% each year. So at her time that she left, she was at $111 per hour.
Ryan, a question for you. I think you breezed over it, but is the malpractice policy covered by the Yakima County Health District? Is it being paid for by the Yakima County Health District?
Yeah, so there's not an additional charge through our insurance carrier, but he is covered under as a YHD employee under our insurance carrier.
And just so I'm clear on that, he is, as a physician, distinctly covered. In other words, he'll have $1 million, $3 million caps or something like that.
Yeah.
So Ryan, what you're saying is this $125 exceeds where we started Dr. Everson, where she started out at $100 per hour when she began her tenure with the Yakima Health District.
Yes, that is correct. And that was 3 years ago.
And
I think that for my part, looking at the contract, I would not feel comfortable taking a vote until we can see the document amended. It seems that Mr. Elliott has pointed out that this is a significant word.
Well, we can approve it with that condition that word "the" just changed to "no."
All right, I would suggest that we alter to begin at $100 an hour, which is exactly where Dr. Everson started off when she began her tenure with the health district.
I disagree. I think he just pointed out that that was over 3 years ago. and within that time there was 5% increases. And what I also understand is that we asked the staff to work with Dr. Bard on a contract that would be acceptable by both parties.
Excuse me, before we go any further, I think we need to have these discussions upon a motion of the contract.
Okay, so I move to approve the contract with the, I move that we adopt the resolution approving a contract for the public health officer with the corrections that Mr. Elliott pointed out.
For a second. Not hearing a second. We will move on.
Question also, what does the term provisional mean, Ryan, in terms of, you mentioned it specifically and explicitly, what would define a non-provisional? Is it because he's a new hire, or is it because of some training requirement?
Yeah, so to be non-provisional, it's a requirement that you have a degree in public education and public health. And of the three candidates that we had, Dr. K was the only one that met that definition. So any of the other two candidates, the state did tell us would be considered provisional.
I find it interesting, Ryan, that I was, dragged through the Yakima Herald Republic on numerous occasions for not having a master's of public health, and yet I don't recall ever seeing them report on Dr. Bard not having a master's of public health. In fact, as I recall, it may have been implied otherwise. So my question is, when was that knowledge made public, and how public was that knowledge made?
I recall that we discussed the idea that of our three candidates, only one candidate had the master's in public health requirement that would allow them to not be provisional.
Was that executive session, Andre, or was that in public?
I honestly don't recall.
I don't recall it, and I wasn't in any of the executive sessions, so I guess I might suggest that it might have been.
Correction, that wasn't a public session. I can't iron out exactly what date, but it wasn't a public one.
I don't remember the format, but I do remember it being stated.
Our meeting minutes would be able to supply that, so it would be interesting. I do know that I recall Ryan reading many public comments where that was asserted, similar to what you're saying, Dr. Atterbury. It was asserted that that Dr. Bard many times would not be have to be provisional, and there was no correction upon reading those comments by Ryan or staff that was not accurate. I do recall it was the final meeting, but as we're not able to talk about executive session, we would need to consult the minutes to determine if that occurred in an executive session or for public comment as you've requested. So perhaps staff can review the minutes and report back next meeting.
Yeah, I believe several times there's public comments that Dr. Bard was an infectious control doctor and was qualified. I don't know if there was a public comment that mentioned about being provisional.
It just seems pertinent that might have made people's opinions, but I mention it only because it's poignant and stinging still to this day.
I do believe we did not receive a second, so we would need to move on, I believe, Chair Anderson, to the next agenda item.
I do have a comment I'd like to add. I was sitting here doing some totaling up as we were talking about the whole salary issue. And if Dr. Everson started at $100, it was 3 years ago, a 5% increase per year would take it to about $110.25 an hour.
When she left, he's at $111 an hour.
Right. Yeah, I have 110. That's about 111. Yes.
Was Dr. Everson on a provisional approval, or was she fully qualified under the statute?
She was fully qualified under the statute.
If we add another 5% to that, Ryan, because you said she left at 111, it's still about $116.
Right. But we also have to take into consideration where Dr. Everson, what her qualifications qualifications were, where she was at in her career. There's a lot of different variables. Where Dr. Bard, we did negotiate with him and came up with 125 for Board of Appeals.
But he still is provisional and she was not. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes.
Right.
I would make a motion to make the salary $100 an hour as a provisional salary and go from there.
Motion.
Commissioner McKinney, we can't hear you.
I'll second that motion.
Been moved and seconded to amend the salary to start at $100 an hour. Any further discussion?
So we're not taking into consideration inflation, the fact that given the 5% each year that was negotiated into the previous health officers, we're not taking that into consideration right now. Is that correct?
I'm happy to consider a friendly amendment of adding the, I don't know whether 5% or 3% step increase is reasonable, but step increases are more of a governmental function. I will tell you that most physicians that I know do not make what they made 3 years ago, and that number continues to go down.
So, Ryan, I don't know if you've done the math, but currently, like right now, if she started, I don't know how long Dr. Everson was here, but she started off at $100. She left at $111. What would be her actual salary right now?
So her actual salary would have been 100. Well, at 111 in January, she was due for an increase. So it would have been 5% more than 111.
$115 is what I determined. Just by giving it out. Thank you.
If I may, full disclosure, this was in negotiation with Dr. Barg, who has had a full career as an infectious disease specialist in our community. So we were taking into account his knowledge and experience in dealing with many of the populations that are public health centers.
Yeah, Andre, I'm taking all that into consideration when I make that proposal.
I did too. I did have a second, so I'll call the question.
Well, I haven't had the chance to speak yet. I had a question real quickly. With the, there's a amount in there with it, which is the maximum annual cap of $75,000. Did Dr. Everson have that in her contract as well, or what did that look like?
Yes, she had a maximum amount also.
Same amount?
I believe it was $50,000 was the maximum amount because we knew that there's less hours due to being from out of town.
And Commissioner Lindy, if I may, that is the amount we expect in the event of an emergency that can be increased if needed to ensure the safety of the community.
Ryan, did you just
There's
say
been
that she had a not to exceed 50,000?
Dr. Everson's.
How did we pay her significantly more than that during the COVID pandemic if she had a contractual cap?
With an agreement with the Board of Health, the approval to exceed that.
So you're saying that there is always an opportunity to change things down the road and provide an amendment. So what we're doing right now is trying to determine what the basic structure should be, and there is always an opportunity to move forward with an amendment.
That is correct.
Yes, what we're expecting in a non-emergency year is what a normal business routine would look like. Obviously, part of the responsibility of a health officer is to protect the community's well-being. Not expect a health officer to stop working. We'd expect them to commit to the needs of the community, which would then have to be paid for.
Yeah, and I see you have that same clause in 4 section. There is, with special circumstances that can be amended.
Okay, we had a motion and a second, but before that, I have a question for Dr. Atterbury. You made a friendly amendment of a percentage increase, and I don't think that was seconded. Would you like to confirm that?
Sure, I made a friendly amendment for an increase at 3% annually. I don't know where the 5%, whether that is stipulation or government required, but 3% seems more than adequate for most COLAs.
Is there a second on the friendly amendment?
Second that, you know, just working within the budgets for the city and other places, I know there's a CPI index that is used, and I think it just kind of needs to be in the same range.
Okay, there's been a first or amendment and a second to the amendment to add the 3% to the first amendment, the motion. Any further discussion on the amendment? Hearing none.
That would be upon annual renewal. So if the start date, so if it's through January 1st, I mean, what we're trying to do is a lot of contract negotiation right now. And maybe Mr. Elliott can advise if that's advisable for us to get that far down the road.
Yeah, I think this was identified as an opportunity to have those discussions so that Dr. Bard would kind of know in the future what it's going to look like. But ultimately, the determination is by the board in terms of what compensation you want to set for them, what expenses. So.
Thank you. There's been an amendment made and a second to the amendment. Any further discussions on the percentage increase of 3%?
Called a question.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to vote if we can vote for time's sake.
Okay. Ryan, would you take a poll, please?
Yes, okay, so we're voting on for the amendment to the original motion, which would be be 3% instead of 5% for the annual increase. If you're in favor, please vote yes. If not, vote no. Commissioner McKinney?
We couldn't hear you, Commissioner.
Yes.
Commissioner Lindy?
Yes.
Mayor Byers?
So let me clarify, we are voting just on the amendment, the friendly amendment? Okay, yes.
Council Member Duval? Okay, I saw a thumbs up, so we'll say yes.
Yes. Sorry, I couldn't unmute.
Dr. Atterbury?
Yes.
And then Commissioner Anderson?
Yes.
Okay, the vote's in favor, 6-0.
Okay. Now we'll go back to the original motion made by Dr. Atterbury. Would you like to reiterate that, please?
Yeah, I recommended an hourly rate of $100 an hour, and I haven't done the math to figure out what the max would be under that, but Ryan, I'm sure, can do that math, whatever that is. But it would be $100 an hour times billed hours.
Okay, it was
50 hours a month, so that would be $60,000.
Okay, it was moved and seconded by Commissioner McKinney on the original motion. So is there any further discussion on that?
Okay, I do need some clarification, and that is, what are the expected billable hours? I'm still not clear about that.
Expected billable hours?
Yes.
So on average, 50 hours per month.
50 a month, okay.
So 5,000 per month, 50,000 annual maximum.
Thank you. I appreciate
Is it
it.
60,000 annual, correct?
Yes, 60.
Yeah.
Any further questions?
I do have another question. Are there any other responsibilities, if you compare contracts, responsibilities or expectations that Dr. Bard will be providing that Dr. Everson does not?
Dr. Bard will be able to handle the TB patients where Dr. Everson was not when she was first hired. And so we had Dr. Spitters, who was our previous health officer, was our TB consultant for the first year of her contract.
And additionally, Ms. Duval, well, again, we've had many years of health officers who do not live in Yakima County. So part of the relationship will be to work with the medical community to build initiatives. So there will be a, if you will, a non-clinical component of this so that there is an opportunity to work on long-term public health initiatives that benefit from medical intervention.
But any additional hours spent, Andre, doing that would be billable. So I mean, he'd be compensated for theoretically that work as well, just as billable hours.
We would expect that to live within the 50 hours of that we're including. Correct.
Okay. So again, just to clarify, we are expecting somebody to do more work for the same amount of money. And that was what was proposed, correct, Dr. Atterbury?
I believe that is modern day healthcare.
I called the question if everyone's had
Yes, any further, the question has been called. So Ryan, would you conduct a poll, please?
Okay. Please vote yes for the motion with the amendment and no if you're not. Commissioner McKinney?
Yes.
Or Lindy?
Commissioner Landy, we can't hear you, sir.
Oh, I didn't hear my name called. I'm gonna vote no on this, and in case motion fails, I would probably come back and propose 110, but also I'll say no.
Mayor Byers?
No.
Council Member Duval?
No.
Dr. Atterbury?
Yes.
And Commissioner Anderson?
No.
Okay, so 2 yes votes and 4 no votes against the motion.
So with that, then I would move that we change the contract to propose that Dr. Bard be compensated at the rate of $110 an hour with the 3% increase as was already approved, and with the cap as would be described with the 50 hours per week.
Commissioner Lindy, are you aware that we calculated it to be 116, not 110?
Yes, but I'm proposing 110.
There's been a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second his motion.
Dr. Atterbury is a second. Any further discussion?
Yes, I would like to just comment that if Commissioner Lundy had not made the motion for 110, I was prepared to make a motion for 116, which is what we calculated the current rate would be with the annual increases given up to this point.
I'd also like to add that I feel like that is very appropriate. Like as I pointed out, we are asking this new health officer to take on more work. And I just feel like it's very disrespectful that we're not willing to meet him where the contract was going to be at anyways.
Well, the meet him where the contract was going to be. The first contract was an ask. An ask is not where you meet somebody somewhere else. So I just think you got to be careful when you say where it was going to be. It wasn't going to be anywhere till we said it.
Dr. Everson's. I'm referring to Dr. Everson's, not the proposed contract that we are reviewing right now. That one was significantly more. I think it was $125 an hour. How much was it?
It was originally 100.
No, the one that was negotiated with Dr. Barch.
125 with an understanding.
125. See, I'm not saying that we were going to meet him at 125. I'm saying that Dr. Everson's was going to be at 116 right now. So again, we are asking somebody to do this job with more responsibility and not being compensated for it.
Well, I mean, that's a gross misstatement to say not being compensated.
Another time.
So it isn't customary that when you hire someone new that you automatically place them at the same pay rate where the person they're replacing left off. That's not automatic. And so
no, it's not.
You've made it very clear that he's going to be doing more work. I don't know if Dr. Everson would agree with that. And there was obviously the distance. Maybe that made her role more challenging. But again, we have a provisional approval. And local, we're grateful for that. He also isn't going to have to travel, which is beneficial. And he can spend most of the time doing the things that we hope he will do to promote public health in Yakima County. But he is provisional. I find Commissioner Lindy's $110 to be very reasonable. I believe Mayor Byers seconded it. Is that correct?
No, I did not.
It was me.
Dr. Atterbury did. Okay, I just want to make sure where we're at.
Yep. So any further discussion? Ryan, would you read the motion and take a poll, please?
Yes.
Actually, I would like to make an amendment to Commissioner Lindy's motion my amendment would be to set the salary at $116 per hour.
Well, I would second that motion.
There's been an amendment made of adjusting the salary to $116 an hour and seconded. Commissioner Lindy, would you please comment?
Well, I'm certainly willing to have it voted on. That's fine.
Okay. Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Hearing none, would you, Ryan, would you conduct a poll?
Yes, so the amendment is $116, and which would make the total annual $69,600. So if you're in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying yes. If not, signify by saying no.
If I may, Ryan, I apologize. I just want to add, I believe the amendment, the original resolution was to include a 3% increase as well.
That's the original. So
Okay. I just want to make sure
we'll
we're all agreeing to the same thing. Thank you.
Commissioner McKinney,
No.
Commissioner Lindy,
Yes.
Mayor Byers,
Yes.
Councilwoman Duval,
Yes.
Dr. Atterbury,
No.
and Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
And in favor, 4-2.
Okay, the amendment is to the salary has been made is 116 an hour. So Commissioner Lindy, there was your motion now was a 110. Where do we go from here?
So it's been amended to 116 now. So the
Okay.
original motion has been amended to 116, which would make it 69,600 maximum annual at 3% increase August 1st of each year.
I would just reiterate, Commissioner Anderson, that in the real world, in the business world where I live, in the healthcare business world, there is no guarantee to come in at the salary where your predecessor left. That is a completely artificial designation. And that, in fact, I would tell you that it's just the opposite. You usually come in less than what your predecessor left at. So I just want to put those minutes on the record, and then happy to have a vote.
Thank you, Doctor. Commissioner Lindy, we can't hear you.
Oh, well, there's nothing else to vote on, is there, at this point?
No.
I thought we voted on the amendment, but not the original motion. I guess, do you need to vote on the motion, or do you?
Yeah, so we would need to vote on the original motion as
Okay.
amended.
Okay.
Say that again, Ryan.
Now we would need to vote on the original motion as amended, which would be $116 an hour for a total annual maximum of 69,600 with a 3% increase on August 1st. And also the change in the word that James attorney in section 5 from the to no. So
Okay. Would you conduct a poll, please?
yes, if you're in favor of the motion as amended, please signify by saying yes. If not, signify by saying no. Commissioner McKinney,
No.
Commissioner Lindy,
Yes.
Mr. Byers, Mayor Byers,
Yes.
Councilperson Duval,
Yes.
Dr. Atterbury,
On behalf of the taxpayers of Yakima, no.
and Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
So in favor, the motion passes in favor 4-2.
Thank you. Okay, so I think we're concluded with that. We need to move on to item B. Ryan, consideration of rescheduling the Board of Health meetings to a different day and time. Council Duval, would you please address that? You're on mute.
Yes, I would be happy to address that. So I went back and looked at our meeting minutes, and we have had 7 regular meetings. And then we also have had several special meetings. What I found was that we are going over our time of the 2 hours, and the average that we're going over is about 28 minutes. So I do think that we need to consider making our meetings at least 2.5 hours. Today's meeting, we did spend 1 hour, about just under an hour of our time going through public comments. I do want to give people enough time to submit their public comments for us to listen to them, but I also don't want rushed director reports. So that is why I'm bringing this to our attention. Also for scheduling, I have a full-time job outside of my volunteering on this board, and it'll help me with scheduling if we set the time and stick to that time. I do want to point out that 3 of the meetings did go over 30 minutes. On January 27th, they went over 37 minutes, over 2 hours. On March 31st, it went over 47 minutes. And May 26th, it went over 42 minutes. So I know that this also puts a strain and conflicts with the time of the staff at the health district that have other meetings to attend that they cannot get to because they are still in this regular board meeting. So I just hope that everyone can consider that we either need to make it longer, or we need to change it to a different time. So I'd just like to open up that discussion.
Well, I have a question for you. Would it be better for your schedule if we started at 8 o'clock?
I don't think that that's the problem. I think the time is that we're going over the allotted time. So my suggestion is to change it to 2.5 hours. We either need to do it from 8:30 to 11:30 and stick to that time and adjourn at 11:30, or we can find a better time in our schedules to have this meeting.
That would be 3 hours, just.
No, yeah. You want to change,
I'm sorry, after you, Commissioner.
Councilor Goldman, 8:30 to 11:30 would be 3 hours.
Okay, 8:30 to 11.
Is that your proposal?
No, I'm opening it up for discussion. I want to know what you guys have suggested. I asked at our last meeting to look at your agendas, look at your schedules. I do think that if our meetings were at a later time, we would actually not have any conflicts with the staff not being able to attend their regular meetings. I think that we will have more public participation. I don't know when we are going to be back in meeting in person, but it would also give people the opportunity to come make their public comments or testimony in person. I think we just have more involvement from our community. I know that right now that we are very spoiled with being able to email in our public comments, but I think eventually we need to look to the future.
Seems to me that we've got a couple
Any
of
other
issues
comments?
that you're bringing up here. So number one, there's a time issue. So you're suggesting different times. I would offer that we've had meetings every 2 weeks, some in the morning and some in the evening. So that's certainly something that we could potentially, if we get to a point where we don't need regularly scheduled special meetings, that perhaps every other month we alternate, where the health board meeting is in the morning and the following month it's in the evening. That's something to consider to give people opportunities to attend. The other thing, though, I think, which is more concerning to me, is that we're potentially considering setting a limit. I'm not aware of other significant boards who are making very significant decisions that will put a time frame on how they're going to conduct business I'm quite sure that everyone has involved in, and as you bring up, you have another job, and a lot of people have had meetings run long during the pandemic, and we have to do it because the work of the people must be done. And to assert that the staff's time is being wasted addressing the public, which is where this is the opportunity
No,
for the staff.
I'm not asserting that at all. I'm saying that they have meetings to get to that they schedule after our meeting that they have not been able to go to. For example, the nurses meeting that they held on every Wednesday. They had all the school districts, all the nurses were waiting there, and they were not being addressed because the people that run those meetings are in our meeting.
That's correct, Ms. Duvall. And I similarly have had people waiting on me because I didn't get out of this meeting to fulfill my obligation to meet with someone. And unfortunately, we all have to determine what takes precedent over, or what other obligations we have met. So as long as we are currently in discussions, as you note, that consistently are going over the time allotted, it's because this board has determined that it's business sufficient enough or important and vital enough to the community to continue. And we all know that at any point, anyone can move to adjourn. So there already exists the tool to adjourn a meeting if sufficient majority of the board feels that the items are no longer relevant or can be tabled to another forum. So I would suggest that the tools exist. I am absolutely agreeable to discussing potentially moving our meetings, moving them up or down, starting or ending later, and certainly offering opportunities to alternate from mornings to evenings or even afternoon meetings. Those are all great opportunities of discussion, but I would caution against putting any kind of limit to how long a meeting will be conducted for.
I might add that I would suggest doing bi-weekly meetings while we're in this pandemic, as Andre pointed out. I mean, there's just too much to deal with in a once a month meeting. I think we need to be meeting twice a month. And I agree also that the morning afternoon alternations is reasonable, so that they would be morning meetings on these Wednesdays and bi-weekly alternating with that evening meetings, as we've been doing for the last 6 months.
May I ask Ms. Duvall, if we were to keep with our 8:30 schedule currently, but we extended to 11 or 11:30 so that we're assured that we have 2.5 hours or even 3 hours, with the obvious privilege of leaving early if business is concluded, would that be a beginning for you?
Yes, absolutely. I want to point out that we're at almost 11:30 right now. So I think it would be appropriate to make it 3 hours long. I just want, if there's something that you can do, if there's something that we can do to be proactive instead of, not being able to attend our other commitments, then why not do it?
Well, I can assure you, Commissioner, that if we cut back on new business, like the next topic we're about to talk on, we will only assure hundreds more comments come in and hours more time of reading them. There could be a way to make that more efficient. I don't know, Andre, whether it's allowed that we make the emails available, posting online, so that they're publicly available and people can read them, and we don't spend an hour front end of our meeting reading emails. That doesn't seem like the best use of time. With that said, I think that their points have to be expressed, so giving them a venue to express them might help.
Well, sir, an hour is a long time to read public comment. I think what we can do, if you don't mind, is Ryan and myself will work with James to ensure that we're meeting the standards of the Open Public Meeting Act. Would that be open to you, James?
Yes.
So let's do that, and certainly open to having a longer meeting, which would allow staff to schedule that time, and we can reschedule other meetings to ensure that we have enough time to meet the needs of the board.
Let me add a few ideas here. First of all, I think that doing the meetings from 8:30 to 11:30, if we can adjourn earlier, if we get things done, I think is very appropriate time-wise. I would also support Dr. Atterbury's suggestion that we continue with bi-monthly meetings, one in the morning, one in the evening, giving people opportunity until we get past some of the heavier business that we're working through for a pretty good time. As far as public comment, I really don't want to curtail that because I think that,
You're breaking up, Mayor.
I'm sorry, somebody mentioned, just going back to participation. I don't think we're ever going to move away from the electronic piece permanently again. I think we need to have both avenues available, both email comments and personal attendance. So if there's a way, Mr. Elliott, that you can help us navigate that to have both a public participation in open meetings as well as a way to deliver the electronic comments, that would be helpful.
And Mayor Byers, I just wanted to make sure I clarified my comment. I did not mean to suggest we curtail people's public opinion or comment. I wanted to say allowing it some other venue so they didn't have to be read aloud at the beginning of the meeting if they could be posted, if that's possible. I don't know whether that's possible or not. I guess I'm asking Andre and the director and the person who organized the meeting if that's possible, I guess.
I wasn't suggesting that. Somebody made a comment about, I don't remember who it was, just about, kind of going back to public participation. My use of that word was, we don't want to curtail public comment in any way, so we need to continue both avenues.
Yes, and if I may, it's not just, we want to allow for public comment, obviously, that we want to meet state law.
Right.
Mr. Elliott, I have a question for you to consider. Is we had an overwhelming number of comments read this morning about the same subject. Is it possible to kind of just for Ryan or whoever is going to be commenting on those to say we've had 25 on this topic or we've had this number on that topic rather than go through the detail of it? Would that meet, my question is, would that meet public records? And I'll physically submit them, put them in the record, but not read them out loud.
Well,
Yeah,
I'm sorry, go ahead, Mayor.
Well, Commissioner
I'm sorry,
Anderson,
I wouldn't
they're
feel comfortable with that.
Sorry.
I wouldn't feel comfortable with that, Mr. Anderson, unless we state all the contents in full are available for people to read.
Right,
So
that's
if
what
I
I
could
was,
just
that's what I was
interject,
getting at.
Commissioner Anderson, that already exists on the website. Ryan can speak to that. And we've had quite a few questions over the past few months where someone has not had their comment read in its entirety. It already states on the website when you are submitting comment that not all of your comment in its entirety, or it may be summarized. So there certainly is already a tool for us to accomplish what we're wanting to accomplish.
Okay.
So one more time, I'd like to ask a question. So if we're saying that we would like to post them so they're available in full for people to read if they want to take the time to do that, can we also have them sent directly to Board of Health members?
Yes, that can definitely be done.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
There's also then an opportunity for staff to create a hyperlink on the website so that all public comments are posted according to the meeting they were submitted to be read for.
Well, again, I'd like to work, Commissioner McKinney, with James Elliott, because public comments by their very definition are public. So if they've just sent to board members, that may not meet the standard. So I do want to make sure that we are meeting and exceeding the state law.
Correct.
So I can't answer that. I think we'll have to research that.
But if they're posted on a website, Andre, would that meet the standard, I guess? Do you know that answer, or are you going to research?
No, I really don't have a definitive answer.
Gotcha.
Commissioner Lindy?
Yes, I would like to move that we change our Board of Health meeting schedules to include, at this point, 2 3-hour monthly meetings. So to help people from a planning and scheduling standpoint.
Second that motion.
Once a month meetings?
Twice a month.
Twice a month. Okay. It's been moved to reschedule our meetings to twice a month for the length of 3 hours each. And was there a second?
Yes, Commissioner Anderson, I second. Thank you.
Commissioner McKinney seconded. Any further discussion?
I have a clarification question, Commissioner. What time would those meetings be? I've heard a couple different things that we'd alternate regular meetings in the evening, morning, or.
Well, I'd suggest to the board that we stick with our normal times so that it's not confusing for the public, but it's just extended.
So
I'm okay with that.
8:30 to 11:30, Ryan, on Wednesdays at the scheduled time. And then the alternating ones would be 5:30 to 8:30 on the Wednesday afternoons in 2-week intervals, allowing for the every now and again 5-week month.
It's the second Wednesday of each month.
Second Wednesday, there you go.
Yep, I agree with that.
Do you agree to that, Commissioner McKinney?
So long as we're not setting, though, a limit on ending or adjourning at that specific time.
Agreed. I agree.
All right.
Call to vote.
Okay, so I'm going to call for the poll, Ryan.
Okay, for you're voting on, we're going to have 2 3-hour monthly meetings. If in favor, state aye. Not in favor, say no. Commissioner McKinney.
Aye.
Commissioner Lindy.
Aye.
Mayor Byers.
Yes.
Councilmember Duval.
Aye.
Dr. Atterbury.
Aye.
And Commissioner Anderson.
Aye.
In favor, 6-0.
Okay, good. Thank you all. Now let's move on to new business. And A is mask guidance for schools, and Commissioner McKinney.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Anderson. So I know we've already kind of touched on this, but the way the Department of Health has issued guidance for return to school even last year is that it left it up to the superintendents of each school districts to have quite a bit of autonomy about what the protocols they were going to follow, what kind of safety protocols they were going to put for return to, as we know, in person, which is best for our students who choose to go to school in person. Obviously, they still have the opportunity to not go to school if that is a parent choice. So I think at this point there's been a lot of discussion, not in just Yakima County and our community, but across the nation. One thing I think is important to note is that what was the initial reason for all of the shutdowns that we experienced, and that's because we didn't know as much about the virus. There was certainly a lot to fear, but I certainly think we haven't yet gotten to the point in our community where we've acknowledged, at least in the health district, that this continues to be at this point a choice. So if someone is contracting COVID, they have had the opportunity to receive the vaccine. And I think we heard from several grandparents who stated that they are vaccinated, and the thought that the grandchildren are going to have to continue to wear masks to protect them from who? So they themselves are being asked to protect other people in the community who have had the chance to get the vaccine. And then we take that, though, to children and vaccines. As we have all studied, we know that not only in the nation, we've seen a steep decline in vaccines, and in our own community, we have seen what we can call vaccine saturation. So we have had an enormous amount of time now for people to the credit of every person who's worked hard on this in Yakima County, that we have had free, low barrier, easy access, constant mobile pop-up access to the vaccine. It's prominent, it's everywhere. You can see it wherever you go. It's fantastic that we've achieved that point. We have over 20,000 vaccines that are on demand and at the ready. And you can, as we've seen, there are thousands of appointments every day that you can get in Yakima County that are going unfilled. And tragically, we are wasting vaccine, which we have a moral obligation to ensure that that does not happen. The numbers of people who are receiving the vaccine by way of age demographic declines as you go down to the younger ages. Obviously, that's because it's not only been approved yet on an emergency level only to 12, but it does have emergency approval to 12 to 17-year-olds. Across the nation, we have seen, though, that the vaccine saturation among that youngest age group is significantly lower than the older age groups. Why is that? Well, parents are determining at a higher rate that they would prefer to wait or not vaccinate their children. In Yakima County and in the state of Washington, we were able to vaccine 12 to 17-year-olds under an emergency approval of the vaccine on May 12th. So we can all agree that since May 12th, there has been ample opportunity for people to go and vaccinate their 12 to 17-year-old children. Right now, we have 20% of our population who's 12 to 17 who are fully vaccinated. And those data points have been available to every health board member and are out there for public consumption. So with this time now that we have had ample opportunity since May 12th for 12 to 17-year-olds to receive the vaccine, we've hit 20%. On a national level, depending upon the poll, you have anywhere between 51% and over 70% of adults who've stated that even with the emergency approval, they do not plan to vaccinate their children under 12 years old. I would defer to Dr. Atterbury, but I'm sure that likewise, the flu vaccine, similarly, we see drop-offs and declines in younger populations because they are not as immunocompromised as the elderly who may have comorbidities. So my concern here is that we are not allowing for the natural end to our children having to make adjustments to their daily lives to protect the adults who now have had the opportunity for 6 months to receive the vaccine. So I welcome comment on this among the board, but my intention is this. I would like to motion that this board directs the staff to support all school districts who provide a plan for approval to return to in-school for the 21-22 school year, with masks being a voluntary additional layer of protection that students and staff can make, not mandatory.
So, Commissioner McKinney, I appreciate your comments here, and I just heard that Governor Inslee made an announcement this morning about masking in schools. And what if I'm getting this correctly, he is requiring at the beginning of this school year, that all students and staff are required to wear masks while indoors. And he said this is law, unfortunately. Let me think here. Guess where I'm coming from this, I disagree with the governor. I think this is a mistake for reasons that I stated earlier in this meeting. Our risk for our students is so low, and the downside of them wearing the mask from an educational standpoint is harmful. I guess what I would like to do is I would propose that we, as a board, recommend to the state that they reconsider in light of the. I think it's the wrong move for our kids. We'd like them to reconsider, and that they need to allow us that opportunity to have the kids in school without masks.
I'm going to ask Commissioner Lindy. We have a motion made by Commissioner McKinney. Is there a second to that?
I second her motion.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion on that?
I'm going to ask for clarification after there's discussion, Commissioner Anderson.
I wasn't sure. I'm asking for clarification right now. I'm not sure that there was actually a formal motion, or she said that with conversation, she would like to make the motion. Can you clarify that, Commissioner McKinney?
Chair Byers, so in conclusion, I did make a motion that we as a health board are directing staff who works with superintendents to approve any back to school plans for the 21-22 school year, which include voluntary masking by staff and students, not mandatory.
Any further discussion?
I'll need Commissioner Anderson, I'll need a clarification. Commissioner McKinney, are you saying you're recommending to the staff that we support this, or that you're directing the staff to do this?
Well, I would say that the health board sets the policies for the staff to administer. So how would you interpret that?
Well, I'm happy to defer to members of the board. I do want to respect the chance for the board to discuss, and I'm happy to wait to answer that, ma'am.
Morning.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, I would like to just point out a few things. At 10:30, our governor laid out some new laws. Right now, we are in transition between one health officer to the next. So I don't think it's appropriate for us to be making these type of recommendations or setting these policies without the new health officer's input that will have to carry these out. And again, I want everyone to remember the comments that Dr. Yucca made earlier, that we can contract our recommendations, but not expand them to say that masks should be voluntary. So, and then if Mr. Elliott could again remind us the legal ramifications that can come from making recommendations that are not that are against the law.
Yes, Ms. Duval, that's exactly what I'd like to address at some point.
What we
Further
don't know is
discussion?
whether or not the statement that made from a press conference actually altered the Department of Health guidelines, which still specify that local superintendents are able to set the standard for return to school. So it's certainly, apparently just from a press conference, we don't have the answer to that question yet.
Then more of the reason why we need to wait.
There can be a call to question and the board can choose to not take up the vote.
Okay, well,
Call table or question?
I think it's important to share that, as I understand it, there's a distinction between the issue that we originally were addressing, which was remote school versus in-person school. My understanding is that we still have an expectation that masking is required for both vaccinated and unvaccinated people in school. We have to follow state law, period. That's our obligation, whether the board agrees with it, as Commissioner Lindy mentioned, or not, we have to. So to your point, the health officer can be more restrictive, but not less restrictive than state law. So we are not capable as a staff to object to state law and not follow state law. And I further want to share that in discussions with Endurus, our risk pool carrier, the ones that provides us with insurance, we could jeopardize our insurance coverage if we actually have a board that votes to not follow state law. And in fact, members of the board become vulnerable to litigation if that happens. The errors and omissions policies that protect you as board members will not protect you if you intentionally violate state law. So I share that with you honestly, and I look to Mr. Elliott to reinforce this. But again, we're moving into a very dangerous position where we're moving from recommendations or interest of the board to share their collective concerns with the governor, which is certainly your choice, to directing the staff to do something that potentially is not only illegal, but also could jeopardize our status as a governmental agency.
Okay, did I hear that the question had been called for?
No,
Oh.
Ms. Duval was simply stating an opposition, and I noted that if someone wanted to do so, that could certainly occur.
Okay,
I would like to make a move to table or postpone this until we have clarification on the State Board of Health recommendation on superintendents of schools having.
I second that motion.
I would just make comment that any and all parents that disagree with this can, start a petition to recall the governor. And that might be the best course of action. If we do not like their activities, you recall them. That's what's going on in California. That might soon be going on in Washington State.
I don't think that's a bad suggestion, Dr. Atterbury.
all right. Well, we have a motion and a second. Would you like to reiterate that, please, Mayor Byers?
Yes, I made the motion that we, I don't know if the correct terminology, you can help me, Mr. Elliott, is either postpone or table this discussion until there is clarification on what is the precedent here, the State Board of Health directive that superintendent of schools have final say, or the governor.
Yeah, I understand a motion has been made to table. I understand Ms. Duval has seconded that motion to table. So to the extent that the board wants to vote on that motion to table this issue till there's further info, you can do that.
Oh, thank you. Any further discussion?
Mayor Byers, are you suggesting it's tabled until the next regular meeting or our next scheduled meeting?
I would like to table it until we have clarification. I don't know when that's going to be.
Our next scheduled meeting, or Commissioner McKinney, is August 11th at 5:30. That's the second Wednesday.
I would say then to the next scheduled meeting because that'll give the clarification time to come through.
Okay. Any further comments? Hearing none. Ryan, would you take a poll, please?
Yes, if you're in favor of tabling the motion, please state yes. If not, state no.
And tabling the motion until August 11, correct?
Till the next, yep, the next Board of Health meeting. Commissioner McKinney,
No.
Commissioner Lindy,
Yes.
Mayor Byers,
Yes.
Councilmember Duval,
Yes.
Dr. Atterbury,
No.
and Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
All right, in favor, 4-2.
Thank you. We'll now move on to item B under number 14, which is the hospitalization and death attributed to COVID-19, and Commissioner McKinney.
Commissioner Anderson, and actually, I think Melissa actually spoke to this upon a question earlier from Commissioner Lindy, but across the U.S., there have been hospital organizations and county health districts and state health districts who have actually gone back and done auditing of both the death counts and hospitalizations that are attributed because of COVID versus with COVID. So hospitalization due to COVID versus hospitalization for another reason and having tested positive. As we know, a lot of people were going to the hospital and required, whether they were there or not, for COVID symptoms. For example, if a child fell and broke their leg, they were required to enter the hospital and have a test. And in the hospital systems in California specifically completed an audit and found that for children 18 and under, they had overreported COVID hospitalizations by 43%. So in keeping with the idea that we should, as our finances are currently being audited, I would like to see us have a independent person who I would suggest would be our county coroner, be involved in working closely with the hospital and with Ms. Sixberry to perform an audit for all hospitalizations in Yakima County that have been earmarked because of COVID, as well as any deaths earmarked as COVID or with COVID, to make sure that we can audit these numbers and find out exactly where we are for our part, for Yakima County's part, and make sure that we are providing updated and accurate data for public consumption.
Is that any comment on this?
Commissioner McKinney, are you making a motion here?
I haven't yet, so it's
Okay.
open for discussion.
A motion's been made. Is there a second?
No.
No motion's been made. I guess I just don't know where you're going with this. It's helpful to know what you're trying to say.
I'm not going anywhere with it other than I would like to ensure that we have an audit of the numbers similar to the way that we've had an audit of financials. So what I can say is from experience working in the private sector, before being elected as commissioner, there was a lot of activity. There were a lot of businesses who became far busier. And what ends up happening is that to survive in the moment, you just get things done. I think our hospital staff has done an admirable job. And I do think that as reflected by other government agencies and private agencies who've taken the time to audit, that they have found that there was discrepancies in the data. And I think it's important for us to fully understand the virus, that we ensure that moving forward, we have accurate data. So that's all I'm saying, that I think that we need to make sure that we have an independent party help and assist to review that data to ensure the data that we have in our county is accurate.
So that's just a recommendation or request then, Commissioner?
No, well, so Commissioner Anderson, I wanted to provide opportunity for discussion. I will make a motion if you prefer. I can do so.
Well, I'm sure that's going to cost money, right? So I think it'd be helpful to know how much it would cost for an independent vendor contractor to come in and do that audit. And is that a responsible way to use our funds?
Is
Well, first of
performing an
all, I mean,
audit and a responsible way to use the funds?
No, that's why I was kind of hesitant. I don't know how. I'm saying, like, could there be a better use? You know, are there already audits? What type of things already are in place to make sure that those mistakes are not made? I think, you know, when people die and they have a death certificate, the family has to sign it, correct? And they have to.
no.
Can you answer that question, Dr. Atterbury? Can you
I was
clarify?
clarifying for her. The family does not need to sign off on death certificates. The certifying doctor who declared death does, or the coroner does, but not the family.
Okay.
I think it would be helpful myself to have the audit because I think it would give us a much more accurate, you know, breakdown of the statistics in terms of how, you know, how many deaths actually were COVID comorbid, or it's simply somebody who died and then had COVID, and because it's an accountability of the use of money.
And
So I
also,
think you're asking the wrong facility to do the audit. It's the hospitals that input this information into the Washington, to WA Health. That's where the information is coming from for those who are COVID positive and hospitalized. So I think you would want to audit the hospitals and question their records and their input. And also from the coroner, you would want to question the coroner's office on what they're putting on death certificates. We're simply just using the information that's provided to us. We have no control of what is accurate on that information, other than we take that information and assume that it's accurate because it's being supplied by hospitals in the coroner.
Well, Ms. Sixbury, I'm confused because earlier in this meeting, you stated that you look and you do determine and decipher whether or not someone actually passed away because of COVID or because there was something else. So can you clarify your statement?
So the records, it has to be listed as a COVID on the death certificate or as a contributing factor. If somebody was listed as a death, I take it very seriously and I don't just claim anything as a COVID death. If someone had a failure to thrive for 6 months because they had COVID and now they've had a failure to thrive because they're depressed, I don't consider that a COVID death.
Are you
But it can be listed as a contributing factor on the death certificate.
So are you the lone individual who makes this discussion? So when we see our situation report, how many people are subjectively reviewing these data points to determine what number goes on the situation report?
It comes from the coroner's office with what's listed on the death certificate. It's reviewed by a nurse and then I review it as well.
Okay, so 3 people.
3 people.
Well, and
Plus the hospital records, the cause of death that's listed by the physician who oversaw that.
That doesn't begin to address the hospitalizations.
No, and I was going to share. Oh, I'm sorry. After you, ma'am.
Well, I get it. All of this clearly shows that I think there's a piqued interest into understanding the data better. And clearly it's best practices. Again, this is no different than our finances. There's been a lot that's happened in the last 18 months. Certainly with financial scrutiny that we're prepared. So we're fully ready to walk into an audit and report on it. So why would we not embrace the opportunity to similarly audit the data that is also quite significant? How many people have been hospitalized who have passed away because of COVID?
Yeah, we're making decisions based on policy data, or we're making policy based on data points. We have to, at the very least, make certain that those data points are accurate, that there's no misconstruing of the numbers. Now, maybe we do an audit and all the numbers come out perfectly accurate. That's great. But an audit is to verify what you already think is true, not necessarily to find what you think is true is not, but it might, you know, you can come across those things at times.
Commissioner McKinney, I just wanted to clarify your interest in having an audit is not in question. What I'm sharing is that the information that's submitted is either between the hospital and WDRS, the state reporting system. So the process of doing an audit, I think, would be more easily done through a discussion with the state. I'm trying to share with you that we've got 3 different hospitals. Correct me if I'm wrong, Melissa, but 3 different hospitals that are not always interested in sharing data with us. And so we are not in a position to demand them to do it. The only other position I'd like to share is that there is privileged, confidential HIPAA information that we have to be protective of as well.
Yeah, that's been made very clear, and no one's suggesting that we violate that. But so you've just presumed that these 3 hospitals would not want to voluntarily take part in an audit. So what I'm suggesting is that it's a health district wanting to represent to the public accurate information, that we ask them to work with us in a cooperative manner voluntarily to audit and allow a third party such as the coroner to be involved. So there are nuances, as you've stated, Director Fresco, about what can be required. I'm simply suggesting that we pull out all the stops and make sure that we can go to the public and say that we did everything possible to try to audit and provide accurate data. And I leave that to you to perhaps come back with a response with Mr. Elliott of what we can legally require and what we can formally compel them to do in the name of transparency. The public deserves to know that we've audited these numbers. And I have a feeling that these 3 hospitals would very much like to have that audit to be able to show and represent to the public that they are reporting accurate data to the state. As Dr. Atterbury has just stated, the numbers could be exactly what they are now at the end of the audit, and wouldn't that be wonderful? And that's what we would hope for. So similarly, I think that the hospitals might jump at the opportunity to show that they've been doing things the way we would hope that they are.
Well, we can start that process, certainly.
And Andre, and though we cannot compel them to do so, the State Board of Health can.
That's all I was trying to clarify.
Yeah.
So would it be appropriate or advisable then, Director Fresco, to have a formal letter from the Yakima Health Board requesting that the State Department of Health assist your staff and this health board in conducting an audit of both the hospitalizations in Yakima County as well as the deaths reported in Yakima County?
Well, I'd like the time to determine what's possible before we spend effort to go down a road that's not going to work. I'd like to find out all the options and share those with you, because again, this is about trying to get to what you're asking for in the most expedient fashion and certainly meeting legal standard.
Do you think that you would have sufficient time to bring back to this board on August 11th all the avenues that we might be able to take as a health board and health district to request this audit?
That sounds fair.
Perfect.
Can I ask a question so I make sure I know what I'm being asked to do here? I mean, there was a mention here about trying to figure out what the health district can legally require hospitals to do. I want to make sure, are you asking me, Commissioner, to go out and research what we as a health district can legally require a hospital to do for purposes of an audit? I need to make sure.
Yeah, so I think, Mr. Elliott, it was brought up that we can't legally compel them. And so I referenced your name, making sure that you would, of course, be involved with Director Fresco to ensure that whatever it is that we are requesting meets the scrutiny of your esteemed position, sir.
Well, I appreciate Dr. Atterbury weighing in on that, because I didn't think there's any way those hospitals are going to go for that, number one. But two, us forcing them, I don't think that's going to fly. But nonetheless.
Well, they answer certified letters from the Department of State, from the Department of Health all the time. So they will answer a DOH letter.
Yes. And the only thing again, I'd like to share is we're still in a pandemic, regardless of anyone's definition of that. So our focus is forward on safety and forward on security for our community. So thank you.
I'd also like to make another request on that. Mr. Elliott, if you could also look into, again, the powers and duties of the Board of Health. Does that fall within our, can you check to see if that falls within our powers and duties?
Yes, I will.
Motion to adjourn to our August 11th meeting at 5:30.
It's been moved to adjourn.
Second.
Until August 11th at 5:30. Is there a second?
There was a second by Dr. Atterbury.
Dr. Atterbury, excuse me, I didn't hear you. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Aye.
Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. It's a long meeting, but I think it was pretty fruitful. Thank you much.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.